Hey, tea sippers. Yeah, I had to get a little rest, get me some backdrops and all of that type of stuff. Come on. Hopefully, I won't be here long. Hopefully, I won't be here too long. Excuse me. Hey, hi Vicky, Melo. I'm gonna go ahead and start it. So, latest 134. I am tired, but I had to get some backdrops prepared, and then I ran across this where he's talking about Trump done pulled his kids into his mess, his foolishness. Let's go. But are we surprised? You know, he always pulled his family. I told you she had to go to court, and Melania didn't want to say it, but Melania had to go. Everybody was subpoenaed about that fraud business. And do you know that girl, oh my God, the girl who's finna tell it on all of them got deported over a business that was fraudulently ran. So just like her baby daddy, that's not her husband. I don't know what she did. She got some child support stuff going on up in there, and because of her, there is a. I think they passed something about not being able to get child support. I said, what the hell? But that's listen. What are you talking about?
Yes, Donald Trump is a con man crook.
Yes.
Yes, Donald Trump is a con man crook.
You gonna
Not breaking.
you want to say the
Yes, Donald Trump is a con man crook. Not breaking news. But what is massive breaking
that's
news
not
in
the
this
breaking
story
news.
is the level of depravity.
Yep, and you done pulled your kids into your con. Yes, you did.
Yes, Donald Trump is a con man
Yes,
crook.
he did.
Not breaking news. But what is massive breaking news in this story is the
You're welcome,
level of
Belinda.
depravity that Donald Trump not only has, but also extends to members of his family, most
Hey,
notably
lovey.
son, daughter-in-law. And I'm going to show that story to you in just a few moments because
I've been trying to tell y'all when we was listening to that Jack Smith page, and he was trying to keep us informed of what was going on in court when they was winning cases and they got pulled out for acting a fool, and Melania had to tell where the hidden safe was that he had said that was personal, so don't show this to the feds. And then Melania had to get subpoenaed and pulled in. She had to tell on her daddy. I tried to tell y'all, y'all didn't want to believe me because mainstream wasn't talking about it. I remember somebody came in and said, why is the regular news not talking about it? Yeah, but it's coming out now. It's coming out now. Let's go.
yes, Donald Trump is a con man crook. Not breaking news. But what is massive
Oh, I
breaking
want to
news
catch
in this
that.
story
Hold
is the
on.
level
Hold
of
on. One more time. One more time for the one time. Yes. Can we start with yes?
yes, Donald Trump is a con man crook. Not breaking news. But what is massive breaking news in this story
Thank
is
you,
the level of
Belinda.
depravity that Donald Trump not only has, but also,
Thank you, Belinda, for the sticker, $10 sticker. I greatly appreciate you coming in, showing me some color. Thank you so very much. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. So now I got to start over because Belinda showed some love. And Lovey did too. Lovey, thank you so very much for your gems. I greatly appreciate it. Mwah, to both of you coming in. Right. Thank you. Showing love. Y'all ready? Hey, Joe.
yes, Donald Trump is a con man crook. Not breaking news. But what is massive breaking news in this story is the level of depravity that Donald Trump not only has, but also extends to members of his family, most notably son, daughter-in-law. And I'm going to show that story to you in just a few moments
Daughter-in-law.
because
Are that
you,
the ones with
honestly,
on Turning
will kind
Point?
of be blown away with this, even regarding Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But first, let's take a moment, something you may not
Jared.
know about Trump 40 plus years ago, just to show his level of pettiness, uncreative, and greedy. You got to see this. Check this out right here.
There is a crest that was on the wall at Mar-a-Lago when Trump bought Mar-a-Lago, when he bought that house in Florida in the 1980s. And it is somebody else's family crest.
Someone else's family. Let me see. I'm taking it down so we can see this together. Okay, so this was there when he bought the house, Mar-a-Lago, that he has lost. Let's make no mistake about it. They yellow tape that baby, bad baby off. You know. Yeah. Yeah.
On the wall at Mar-a-Lago when Trump bought Mar-a-Lago, when he bought that house in Florida in the 1980s. And it is somebody else's family crest. And while he lived at Mar-a-Lago, because he was married to the woman who owned Mar-a-Lago, he put up his family crest on the wall as a decoration. And then in what was perhaps a critical error, he apparently neglected to take it down. And Donald Trump took it. He took that other guy's family crest and proclaimed it as the Trump family crest.
Yeah, there you go. It's your family crest and name,
What?
but you left it behind, so I think I'll just...
So he took it like it was his and named it just to be royal.
There's a crest that was on the wall at Mar-a-Lago when Trump bought Mar-a-Lago, when he bought that house in Florida in the 1980s. And it is somebody else's family crest. And while he lived at Mar-a-Lago, because he was married to the woman who owned Mar-a-Lago, he put up his family crest on the wall as a decoration. And then in what was perhaps a critical error, he apparently neglected to take it down. And Donald Trump took it. He took that other guy's family crest and proclaimed it as the Trump family crest.
Yeah, there you go. It's your family crest and name, but you left it behind, so I think I'll just abscond it and absorb it. That's pretty typical Trump back then. Says so much about now. But recently, the New York Times did a little research in this second term, and this is a few months ago, and came up with a number of how much Trump and family have grifted from the American taxpayer just so far. Here.
How much money has Donald Trump pocketed from the presidency since his second election? We did the math. This stack of bills represents $83,730. That's the median.
Wait, what?
Here.
How much money has Donald Trump pocketed from the presidency since his second election? We did the math. This stack of bills represents $83,730. That's the median household income in the United States. Keep an eye on these green stacks. Trump plans to take the $400 million gift from Qatar with him after the presidency, and he seemed to acknowledge that it would change how he treated the country. But the family's biggest cash cow is crypto. People hoping to influence federal policy, including foreigners, can buy Trump's family coin and effectively transfer money Trump pocketed from the presidency since his second election. We did the math. This stack of bills represents...
Hold on.
Here.
How much money has Donald Trump pocketed from the presidency since his second election? We did the math. This stack of bills represents $83,730. That's the median household income in the United States. Keep an eye on these green stacks. Trump plans to take the $400 million gift from Qatar with him after the presidency, and he seemed to acknowledge that it would change how he treated the country. But the family's biggest cash cow is crypto. People hoping to influence federal policy, including foreigners, can buy Trump's family coin and effectively transfer money to the Trumps. The Trumps have made at least $867 million through various cryptocurrencies. Altogether, Trump has pocketed over $1.4 billion.
But wait, there's more and much worse, because this is a current number, courtesy of one Adam Kinzinger, right here.
You know how Trump built his playbook early, the scams, the bankruptcies, the lifetime pattern of taking whatever wasn't nailed down. But what's happening now with your money, it makes his entire career look like a warm-up act. The Trump family has monetized the American presidency to the tune of more than $4 billion. Not over decades, but literally right now while he's sitting in the Oval Office.
And while the sheer number of that, based on the people in America who are suffering, makes you want to hurl, that's nothing in this breaking story. Because when you see that Don Jr. and Laura Trump are involved with making money off of the propagandizing and the social media of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, you cannot believe this. Check this breaking story out.
Salem Media is an Israeli foreign agent. It is listed in a Foreign Agent Registration Act form with the Department of Justice as the delivery mechanism for a major contract between Israel's foreign ministry and Clock Tower Strategies. Salem Media.
Story out.
Salem Media is an Israeli foreign agent. It is listed in a Foreign Agent Registration Act form with the Department of Justice as the delivery mechanism for a major contract between Israel's foreign ministry and Clock Tower Strategies through a German firm called Havas to propagandize the American public. We're talking about $10 million of direct payments to podcasters and influencers, as well as hundreds of millions of dollars to cover the deliverables. And the Salem Media Group Chief Strategy Officer is a federally registered Israeli foreign agent named Brad Parscale, who heads Clock Tower Strategies. Laura Trump, who is Trump's daughter-in-law, and Donald Trump Jr., who is Donald Trump's daughter, now own a 30% stake in Salem Media. So they have effectively merged through this foreign agent business deal with the Israeli Foreign Ministry. The Trump family has merged with the Israeli Foreign Ministry.
Yeah, that was Max Blumenthal, an incredibly prominent, well-respected journalist, dropping that story right there. And it does leave you speechless to understand the level of depravity which I started out with. It is hard to grasp where the line is for these people, and then you finally truly do realize every step of the way, going all the way back to taking a family crest left behind on a wall, all the way up to grab them by the P for Donald, and then every single thing that's gone on with a Qatar jet and crypto and the deals in Vietnam and World Liberty Financial, etc., etc. But this making money off the social media and propaganda of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and now with Iran, where does it end? I don't know. It has to end. We have to get this man out of office.
Absolutely.
Please, you guys, like and share the video. Stay frosty.
Yeah, I agree. We got to get him out of office. It's just all the madness is coming out. Don't you believe? What is she? Okay, let me see. Before we get over there, what is she talking about? Who, is this about Melania? What is this? This short. But them teeth right there was all several different colors. I said, what color was his teeth? Why they put that picture of him and Michael Jackson? Whoever did that. Michael Jackson was not in the Epstein files. Only thing they said about Michael Jackson in the Epstein files is that Epstein didn't like him because he was deterring the kids, trying to save the kids from coming to the island. Neverland. Never have to sell compromise yourself again. That was the concept of Neverland. Never to be abused again. It got lost in the sauce. They flipped the script on him. Okay, that's that one. Let's get to this one. It got lost in the sauce, y'all. He was trying to help the kids, protect them from
We need to stop talking about it,
Epstein.
and instead Melania comes and brings more attention to it.
And because he
Self-servingly, she
did
wants
that,
people to...
Epstein did not like Michael
Melania
Jackson.
Trump's statement in front of the world saying, I am not a part, I was not a
Oh
part
yeah,
of a
no,
sex
we don't need
trafficking
that
ring, and
because she
stop it.
lying. Yeah, because that's a lie. That is a lie. What did I have over here? What did he say?
This is him. She has for years. She's got a financial deal with him. It was this. Yes, Melania despises him. She has for years. She's got a financial deal with him. They've not been together for years, which I already knew. And she basically has already left. And yes, she's pissed off about the Epstein thing and the fact that behind the scenes, the Israel lobby and others that blackmailed Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky stuff, that's confirmed. That not just for her, because nothing she did for the evidence we have, but Howard Lutnick, who did go to the island, lied about a bunch of others, that Trump, as he said, is protecting his friends. It was this. Yes, Melania despises him. She has for years. It was this. Yes, Melania despises him. She has for years. She's got a financial deal with him. They've not been together for years, which I already knew. And she basically has already left. And yes, she's pissed off about the Epstein thing and the fact that behind the scenes, the Israel lobby and others that blackmailed Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky stuff, that's confirmed. That not just for her, because
So
nothing
they
she did for the evidence we
blackmailed
have,
Bill.
but Howard Lutnick, who did go to the island, lied about a bunch of others, that Trump, as he said, is protecting his friends. It was this. Yes, Melania despises him. She has for years.
Wow.
She's got a financial deal with him. They've not been together
don't
for
know if
years,
I
which
knew
I already knew. And she basically has already left.
the
And yes, she's
Israelis
pissed off about the Epstein thing and the fact that behind the scenes,
blackmailed
the Israel lobby and others that blackmailed Bill Clinton with
Bill Clinton.
Monica Lewinsky stuff, that's confirmed.
Oh wow.
That not just for her, because nothing
Why?
she did for
'Cause
the
he
evidence we
wouldn't
have,
go to
but
war?
Howard Lutnick, who did go to the island, lied about a bunch of others, that Trump, as he said, is protecting his friends. It was this. Yes, Melania despises.
Oh wow. Wow. Okay, let's go, y'all. What did she say? Okay, this is about the family.
Desperately waiting for any Republican, any elected Republican, to come forward and criticize Donald Trump. We've seen, a few here and there, like Thomas Massey working with. We're still waiting, desperately waiting for any Republican,
Hi,
any
Jose.
elected Republican, to come forward and
Joseph.
criticize Donald Trump. We've seen, a few here and there, like Thomas Massey working
Jorge.
with Rokana on the Epstein files, but most of the time, Republicans wait until they're, not running for another term to start the criticism, or they wait until they're fully out of power to start the criticism. And I guess former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is in the latter camp, because he is definitely out here doing the criticism, and it's good and necessary, and also makes you wonder, why is he doing it? He sees an opening with 0 Republicans stepping forward to do the right thing on Trump right now. Remember, Chris Christie led the Trump transition team. He helped Trump prepare for his debates, including with Hillary Clinton, by actually role-playing as Hillary Clinton during mock debates. So this is someone who helped elevate Trump to his position of power. So he sees the writing on the wall, and whether it's for politically expedient reasons, his own personal ambitions, or because he is genuinely morally outraged by what is happening, he's going after some big targets here, most notably Senator Lindsey Graham and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who is currently doing any number of things in the government, all related to self-dealing and stuffing his pockets. But let's start with a broad criticism for the party, with Christie expressing disbelief that there is not even a single Republican right now willing to step forward and criticize Donald Trump, particularly related to his post on Easter Sunday.
Real lack of principle is on display every day in the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. These people have become lemmings. They only do what he tells them to do. And not only that, they don't even criticize him when he deserves to be criticized. He put out a post yesterday, which I'm sure many of you saw. And I was going to say exactly what he said. So you better open up the fucking straight, you crazy bastards. Now look, I'm from New Jersey. So you could tell that language flowed pretty easily for me. But come on, man. Like, this is, Coach Amaker knows, he coached at Seton Hall. He understands. Like, but
Obviously gifted.
come on.
America has been occupied by
There's
the
not one
tiny
Republican,
hat
not
juice. I
one,
don't know what that is.
who I've seen in the last 24 hours says,
Obviously
okay,
gifted.
come on now.
It's been taken
That's enough.
over
He
the
sounds like
government.
me during
I
the
don't
show
know
today.
what you're trying to
Yes,
say.
where are they? But we're really waiting for the names. So let's start with Lindsey Graham, a man that Chris Christie calls vapid, vacant as a human being.
Even something as
Very
simple
good.
as that.
All
Mr.
things
President,
come to an end.
those
So
words
whatever they've
on
been
Easter
doing,
Sunday
they don't
were
want to
really
do it
fine.
no more. I guess. I don't know
They
what you're
can't
trying to
even do
say
that.
because you're trying to
They're
say it
scared
in
to do that.
some crazy
Because
type of
here's
way
why,
instead of
and this
just
is where the
saying it.
principles come
Just
in.
talk.
They care more about the
Listen, don't
title
come
than
over
they
here
do
with
about
all
the
that crazy, indirect type. Just talk. The tiny hat juice. What the fuck is that? It's been taken over through the government and there now. It's what the fuck are you? Just talk. It's too late. It's too stop before I delete you. Let me go and get you up out of here. Talk. I'ma remove it one time. You say something crazy, you out of here. Yeah, I don't know what no fucking juice is, girl, boy, whatever you are. Yes, I do erase comments. Yes, I do. I sure do. I'm finna erase you too. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. I'm glad you started early. I'm sorry. I thought you were smart. My bad. Okay, goodbye. Yeah, you just talk. You said that where somebody could just read it and understand. You trying to do all that other stupid stuff like you smarter than thou. Like, let me speak in a dialect. Oh, get on. Y'all kill me. That's why y'all finna fall now. That's why y'all whole empire's about to fall, thinking you better than the average person. Sit down, Satan. Sit your evil ass down. Did you understand that? My bad. I thought you could. Get your ass on. At damn near 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Let me help your ass out.
Start with Lindsey Graham, a man that Chris Christie called.
So it's a problem now, y'all, that people no longer want to accept the bull crap that they're doing now. So because they have been allowing it to go on, just continue to allow it to happen. I guess that's what the dumb person was trying to say. I don't know. But at any time, it's just like anything else. It's just like no. At any point, somebody says no, whether they have said yes 50 million times. At the time that they say no or stop, that means they don't want your shit no more. You understand that? Yeah, I don't care how many times they said yes. This time they said no. Shoot, fly don't bother me. Get your ass on. Everybody get that? Butter Creek Woody, did you understand that? Was that simple enough for the extremely smart people that speak with their mouths all spread wide? Yeah, for the commoners not to be able to understand what they are trying to say. Get your wannabe raw ass. That's why y'all drinking and eating people blood. Everybody that y'all ate, y'all act just like the people who brains and shit y'all was eating on. Yeah, who blood y'all was drinking and who bodies y'all sacrificed and who got, tap into those minors' asses. Girl, now listen, don't make me dig too deep off in this right here. Right here. It's coming. Give me a moment. Yeah, don't get me it took baby girl off. Yeah, y'all better stop while you ahead. They said he offered her up too. He offered his own daughter, just like Kursner's daddy offered him up to Bibi Netanyahu.
Principles on display every day in the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. These people have become lemmings. They only do what he tells them to do. And not only that, They don't even criticize him when he deserves to be criticized. He put out a post yesterday, which I'm sure many of you saw. And I was going to say exactly what he said. He said, you better open up the fucking straight, you crazy bastards. Now look, I'm from New Jersey. So you could tell that language flowed pretty easily for me. But come on, man. Like, this is, Coach Ivanka knows, he coached at Seton Hall. He understands. Like, but come on. There's not one Republican, not one, who I've seen in the last 24 hours who says, okay, come on now. That's enough.
He sounds like me during the show today. Yes, where are they? But we're really waiting for the names. So let's start with Lindsey Graham, a man that Chris Christie calls vapid, vacant as a human being.
Even something as simple as that, Mr. President, those words on Easter Sunday were ill-advised. They can't even do that. They're scared to do that. Because here's why, and this is where the principles come in. They care more about the title than they do about doing the job they have. The best example of this right now in the 535 members of the United States Congress is Lindsey Graham. This is a man who only cares about his title. Nothing else. Absolutely nothing else. He is a vapid, vacant human being. And for him to say the things that he has said about Donald Trump in the past, and all he wants to do is suck up and play another round of golf and pray that he gets the endorsement for the United States Senate. You know, lots of people in my party will say, oh, you know, it isn't the way it used to be and people lack principles. You got to say the names.
Now, to briefly interrupt him, going all in on Lindsey Graham there, I have to say, this is a point that I completely agree with. I can't tell you how many times I've heard Democrats tell us during their interviews with various media outlets, oh, you know, behind the scenes, all these Republicans are so disgusted with Donald Trump. They're so anti-Trump. And my response to that is always, name names. Who are they? Who are the people who are publicly signaling that they support everything Trump does while behind the scenes they hate themselves and hate Donald Trump? Name them. This politeness thing is over. We're in a fight for survival here. If naming a name makes your job difficult or makes things uncomfortable, good. Thousands of children are eating moldy food in concentration camps. I think you'll survive having some spineless weasel upset at you in the hallways at work, senators. So let's hear Chris Christie continue naming names with his commentary on Lindsey Graham here, specifically his betrayal of John McCain in particular.
These are your legs on day one of Tai Chi walking. And here's what they look like after 30 days of Tai Chi walking. We start on Monday, April 13th. If you want to be proud of your body, start Tai Chi walking before April ends to be ready for summer.
Ladies over 180 pounds. If you want to become unrecognizable by spring, on Monday, we're launching a beginner-friendly Tai Chi walking program for women. You'll safely firm your body, calm your mind, and start burning stubborn belly fat. In 1 week, you'll feel firmer.
If you really want to be credible on this, and there's a bunch of other ones that I'll probably say during this hour tonight, but Graham is the first one. And the reason is because a guy who was a hard-edged politician but had some principles was John McCain. And John McCain mentored Lindsey Graham. He saw him as like a son. John McCain, I can guarantee you, is spinning in his grave watching Lindsey Graham suck up to Donald Trump. And so I'm disgusted by what my party looks like in Washington.
But where are the other Republicans who are trying to say the same? That is what we need. So it's so important that Chris Christie is doing this because hopefully it leads to headlines and then that will prompt internal chaos and reporters will ask for comment and then that creates friction for these liars and cowards because it's the pressure. That's really the thing. And Chris Christie continues here, but this needs some context. So Chris Christie recently went on a podcast and he shared the full story of how he built the case to prosecute Jared Kushner's father, Charles Kushner, who is currently the ambassador to France and Monaco. Back in the early 2000s, Charles was found guilty of tax evasion and making illegal campaign contributions. And at the time, Chris Christie was the U.S. attorney prosecuting the case that he called, quote, one of the most loathsome, disgusting crimes that he'd ever prosecuted. And Charles set up his brother-in-law, hiring a sex worker to lure him, was the U.S. attorney prosecuting the case that he called, quote, one of the most loathsome, disgusting crimes that he'd ever prosecuted. And Charles set up his brother-in-law, hiring a sex worker to lure him into a hotel room where a hidden camera was placed to record them having sex so the video could be sent to his brother-in-law's wife, Charles Kushner's own sister. But Trump pardoned him and then gave him a job in the administration, and one Democrat voted to confirm Charles Kushner for his current position as ambassador to France and Monaco. His name is Cory Booker. So Chris Christie begins this segment talking about, well, actually Bill Maher. Bill Maher getting manipulated by Donald Trump, but quickly moves into this podcast appearance where he talked about this case, and then he drops a bomb about Trump apparently trying to break up Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump before they got married.
This famous dinner he had with Bill Maher, and Bill Maher came out charmed, and I just laughed. Bill Maher, probably one of the most cynical people I've ever met in my life. It tells you how skilled Trump is. He can charm you. He has the ability to do it. The problem is he doesn't have the patience or the discipline to do it regularly. And so he gets himself in a lather. I'll give you one example of this. There's a lot of attention from that podcast about me telling, I was talking to Byron York on the way in about the story of Charlie Kushner and prosecuting Charlie Kushner. One of the outgrowths of that was there was a time when
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie,
Trump,
Ivanka,
had dated Jared Kushner. They had broken up, and they gotten back together again, and it became clear to Donald Trump that they were going to get married. And he has said this publicly, that he would have rather had her marry Tom Brady, which might be the only popular thing he could say in New England, to say nice things about Tom Brady. But he was not thrilled, let's say, about this. And I was still the prosecutor at the time. I was still the U.S. attorney when this stuff was going on. And he asked me to go out to dinner. And he said, do you have anything more on the family so I can, break this up? And I thought to myself, haven't I given you enough? Like, her prospective father-in-law hired a hooker to seduce his own sister's husband, videotape it, hold it, and then send it to her on the day of her son's engagement party. I looked at him like, not enough, huh? Like, to say, there might be a family I might want to stay away from, all right? I mean, but that's Trump. Like, when he gets himself worked into a lather, he will say and do anything to get what he wants.
So Trump wanted dirt on the Kushner family, well, above and beyond the existing extensive dirt that existed before they got married. But I guess after the deed was done, he was fully committed, handing out pardons, giving everyone access, giving everyone jobs. And this is part of it, as Chris explains. Part of why those surrounding Trump are not stepping out and offering criticism. Because of power. They want to hold on to their power. But in this next clip, he also reveals an important pattern about how Trump operates that we need to keep in mind.
He then went on to discuss how he dealt with his wife when he eventually did get upstairs, which was to tell her it's all bullshit and there's no truth to it, even though it was on video. And he kept saying it and saying it and saying it. That's what he's telling my wife. And then he looks at my wife and he goes, remember something, Mary Pat. If you say something enough times, whether it's true or not, it becomes true. Now, that's the principle. That's how the president convinces himself. Mm-hmm. As to the people around him, they're not trying to convince themselves.
They know
the
the
title.
truth.
They're in the cabinet. Sit around the cabinet room. People call them Mr. and Madam Secretary. They're getting to do some good things from time to time, both for the country and for themselves. They can't. None of them. Well, maybe a few of them because they're stupid, but none of the smart ones can rationalize what they're in the middle of. So don't give him that much credit. And the president, just remember, if you say something enough times, whether it's true or not, it becomes true. He doesn't say you can convince people. That's different. He says it becomes true. That's what he thinks about the 2020 election. He says it enough times, it becomes true.
In his own head.
That's the principle he lives on.
Oh, wow.
He says they have a title. They're in
Did
the
y'all
cabinet.
hear that?
They're,
If you
in my view,
say
not doing
enough
important
times,
things. Chris
it
Christie,
becomes
What they're
true.
in the middle of. So don't give him that much credit. And the president, just remember, if you say something enough times, whether it's true or not, it becomes true. He doesn't say you can convince people. That's different. He says it becomes true. That's what he thinks about the 2020 election. He says enough times, it becomes true. That's the principle he lives on.
he says they have a title. They're in the cabinet. They're, in my view, not doing important things. Chris Christie says that sometimes they do important things for the country. Sometimes they're doing good things. Not sure where that's happening. But the last bit in there is important. This is why Trump repeats his lies. He believes that if he repeats it enough times, it eventually becomes the truth. It eventually becomes the accepted truth that we all believe. All the more reason to keep calling out his lies every single time.
Y'all see why I don't play with them lies? I call it out. I stop it right when they put those narratives out there. No.
We need Republicans who are close to Trump, who have been close to Trump, to be honest. I just wish it was a Republican with
They
more
have no
to lose,
integrity going along with lies.
with more current power in the government. Now, that is going to do it for me as I wrap my time as guest host today. I want to thank David and Pat for the invitation and the work behind the scenes to make all of this go smoothly.
Let's hear what she got to say about her pappy. I don't want to stall no more.
Deep mouth lines and marionette lines only get worse after 50. Here's how to reverse them starting today. Over 100,000 women have already smoothed their smile lines and lifted downturned mouths with this of growing up in.
Y'all ready? Y'all ready to get the likes up? Are we ready? Hit the like button. Hit those 3 dots at the top right corner. I'm 38 minutes in. 352 people in here. I only have 42 likes. Get the likes up. Like, share, subscribe. Get your membership. Support the platforms. This platform, I'm sorry. I have gems at the bottom where the gift box is. Super chats, super stickers are right next to it. The box that has the $sign. Or you can hit my Cash App. I think it's pinned at the top corner right. Do I have this, J.D. Vance for president? Do I have this set up for, did you wait 10 minutes just to say that? Do I need to move it to 20 minutes? Do I have this set up right to keep these slow pokes out of here? Yeah. Did you hear Christie? He used to be right up under there with him. Did you hear him? Don't be slow all your life. So he done said it enough times that you believe him? Huh? You believe him? Oh, bless your heart. How long was your bus when you was going? Did somebody else, did you get him? Did somebody get you? Oh, you waited all that time just to say that. Lord. Where you at? Let me go and get you out the way, child. I don't feel like. Benita. What's your last name, Benita? Do I need to say Benita? Or do I need to say Benita? Benita. Girl. Bye. I don't feel like playing with you today, Benita. Girl, gone. Gone back to the hood. Y'all say bye to Benita. Thank you, Flip Mode Action. Who else I need to go on and get before we get started? Because we don't want none of them interruptions. Do I need to move the time up? That girl waited 10 minutes just to come in here and say something crazy. I guess she told me. Oh, Lord. At 2 something in the morning. Lord Jesus, please be a fence of protection all around us, the sane and the not so sane. MAGA ain't. You right. MAGA is for making America slaves again. That's the motive. That's the ulterior motive. But like old boy said, he bringing his family down with him. He taking them down there with him. He don't want to be the only Trump in jail or hell. I don't know. Pick your poison, jail or hell. Baby, when she slid that picture of her mama, is that how they started this off with this girl sliding a picture of her mama? Lord, did she fall down the steps or was she assisted? Did this man push his wife down the steps? Only Lord in heaven only knows, but this is how she started this interview off. And I said, Lord, have mercy. I don't know what she gonna say. I chose to wait to watch it with my tea sippers, so buckle up. Y'all go get some water. Hey, Krista, I see some water, some tea, or whatever you need, popcorn. Let's get it off. Y'all need to hit the like button. Let's go.
She was extraordinary.
She was extraordinary. Oh, my God.
She was extraordinary.
Oh, my God. I almost want to make you feel sorry for her, don't it? Okay. Y'all ready?
She was extraordinary. My mother taught me a lot about just like bringing intention to what you do, and being the child of accomplished parents. Most people thought that I would lack the ambition, the preparedness, but my mother taught me that being underestimated is not a bad thing. It's a very powerful thing, actually. And it almost always worked to the detriment of the person who underestimated me.
From real estate to her own multi-million-dollar fashion line,
She was extraordinary. My mother taught me a lot about just like bringing intention to what you do, and being the child of accomplished parents. Most people thought that I would lack the ambition, the preparedness, but my mother taught me that being underestimated is not a bad thing. It's a very powerful thing, actually. And it almost always worked to the detriment of the person who underestimated me.
from real estate to her own multi-million-dollar fashion line, Ivanka Trump continues to carve her own path into the business world, succeeding at every turn.
And then 2 weeks before he announces, father decides he wants president of the United States. Did you have any sense that this was at all on the horizon?
Not really. And then when he pulled the trigger, it was full steam.
But most people wouldn't give up an $800 million annual business to go into government. Why did you?
He asked us for help. And he's like, but I have to warn you, they're going to come at you hard. They're probably going to hate you. She was extraordinary. My mother taught me a lot about just like bringing intention to what you do, and being the child of accomplished parents. Most people thought that I would lack the ambition, the preparedness, but my mother taught me that being underestimated is not a bad thing. It's a very powerful thing, actually. And it almost always worked to the detriment of the person who underestimated me.
From real estate to her own multi-million-dollar fashion line, Ivanka Trump continues to carve her own path into the business world, succeeding at every turn.
And then 2 weeks before he announces, your father decides he wants to be president of the United States. Did you have any sense that this was at all on the horizon?
Not really. And then when he pulled the trigger, it was full steam.
But most people wouldn't give up an $800 million annual business to go into government. Why did you?
He asked us for help. And he's like, but I have to warn you, they're going to come at you hard. They're
probably going to hate you. But one of the things I've learned in moments of tremendous pressure and scrutiny, where any slip up is completely weaponized against you, is to find the signal in the noise. I just don't get distracted by the outside noise. That's probably the thing that has been most helpful to me in terms of performance and success, because you have a choice only in how you respond.
You've said politics is a pretty dark world. This is quite a difficult question to ask, but when you heard the news that there was an assassination attempt on your father's life, do you remember where you were? Like, what's that like as a daughter?
It was fake.
Hi. This is really hard for me.
That guy said it was fake.
This is super interesting to me. My team give me this report to show me how many of you that watch this show subscribe, and some of you have told us, according to this, that you are unsubscribed from the channel randomly. So, favour to ask all of you, please
That
check
happened to
right
me
now
too.
if you've hit the subscribe button, if you are a regular viewer of the show and you like what we do here. We're approaching quite a significant landmark on this show. Ivanka, you don't do many interviews, do you?
Not really, no.
No.
Why don't you do much media stuff or podcasting or interviews?
I actually don't know. I think I get sort of really locked in and heads down on what I'm working on, that I tend to kind of put on blinders and just go. But I like to have conversations in longer form with people that I admire.
I think the reason why I do this is because I naturally see everybody as like a jigsaw puzzle, and you've lived an extraordinary life. You've lived an extraordinary, atypical life that, I mean, it's safe to say almost nobody on planet Earth has ever experienced. And so I think I asked that question, just to be completely honest, at the top, because the life you've lived that we'll get into is one that would have shaped you in a number of ways. And one of them is, I think, from what I read, things that you had said and different experiences you had as a child, is just like trusting people.
You know, it's interesting. I grew up the child of wealthy and accomplished parents. And so I do think there's like a natural barrier that goes up. You're worried about people, especially when you're a kid, liking you for the wrong reasons. I see this now with my son. You know, he wants to be loved by his friends, and I appreciate that. That's good for who he is, not for who we are, and certainly not for what we have. So I do think being the child of famous parents and living such a privileged life, I had this guard, and that guard served me really well for a long time. Like I didn't have any friends, despite the really tumultuous life that I've had, ups and downs, who really disappointed me. Meaning close friends who didn't show up for me, or who changed because of my circumstances or what was happening around me. And I've learned, for me, I mean, you were saying the purpose of life. For me, it's, you know, the expansion and not contraction of the heart. And that's hard as you get older. You know, how do you live a life of service and rooted in love and connection? And I've learned more and more that those walls, they don't serve you. And the only way to have connection, which is so fundamental to the human experience, is to build it, and that requires trust. So I have to trust people. Now, I have a good radar. I'm not foolish. I think I'm a very good read of people, and I think it's one of my strengths. And I think it's why I haven't been surprised by a lot of people. So I read pretty quickly, but I also have had to teach myself, rather than grow sort of cynical, as one tends to as they get older. I've really actually taught myself to be more trusting. And to the extent that means periodically I'll be burned, like I'm okay with that trade-off, because I think it will lead to more meaningful connections in my life.
Probably nets out better, right, in the long term. Realize that.
I think there was always a lot of media attention and scrutiny. You see it, you experience it very early on. I think my parents did a really good job trying to shelter us from it. rather than grow sort of cynical, as one tends to as they get older, I've really actually taught myself to be more, where the man with the nutcracker arrives and then you're in that angel scene. And I remember being so excited, and it was my first nutcracker. So she really encouraged this, and I was dancing at Juilliard, these without social media. You know, not everyone, rather than grow sort of cynical, as one tends to as they get older, I've really actually taught myself to be more trusting. And to the extent that means periodically I'll be burned, like I'm okay with that trade-off, because I think it will lead to more meaningful connections in my life.
Probably nets out better, right, in the long term?
I think so.
I have this photo here of a very small Ivanka.
It's so funny, I look at this and I see my daughter.
Really?
That was like the first thing when I saw that photo.
At what age did you realize that life for you was slightly different from the average person? Like, when does a child realize that?
I think there was always a lot of media attention and scrutiny. You see it, you experience it very early on. I think my parents did a really good job trying to shelter us from it, and it was different then without social media. You know, not everyone, I think the experience our children have, where anywhere they go, people have a recording device in their hands, their iPhone, and can take pictures of them. And, you know, it's so, you're so exposed during your formative years. And thankfully, I did not have that growing up. There were times I felt it. I remember I wanted to be a dancer, a ballet dancer. And, you know, my mom was an incredible skier. She skied on the national team for then Czechoslovakia, now Czech Republic. And so she really believed in the importance of sport for cultivating, where anywhere they go, people have a recording device in their hands, their iPhone, and can take pictures of them. And, you know, it's so, you're so exposed during your formative years. And thankfully, I did not have that growing up. There were times I felt it. I remember I wanted to be a dancer, a ballet dancer. And, you know, my mom was an incredible skier. She skied on the national team for then Czechoslovakia, now Czech Republic. And so she really believed in the importance of sport for cultivating discipline. And so she really encouraged this. And I was dancing at Juilliard, the School of American Ballet here in New York. I was in the Nutcracker, and I remember I was probably...
Jesus warned about fake believers. Most people think believing in Jesus automatically means you're saved. But Jesus himself said something different.
8. And I was, you know, like some small role in the Nutcracker. I was a party girl and an angel. Those were like the entry roles where you like dance at the party, where the man with the nutcracker arrives and then you're in that angel scene. And I remember being so excited, and it was my first Nutcracker. And Michael Jackson had just moved into Trump Tower and was literally our neighbor in Trump Tower. And my father sees him one day, you know, passing in the lobby. I'm with him. I said, you know, my daughter's in the Nutcracker. You should come. You should come see her performance. So he comes to the Nutcracker with my father at the height of his fame to watch me dance. One day, you know, passing in the lobby, I'm with him. I said, you know, my daughter's in the Nutcracker. You should come. You should come see her performance. So he comes to the Nutcracker with my father at the height of his fame to watch me dance. And now this, in retrospect, could be like, wow, what a cool experience. But I was horrified. Like, I was so embarrassed. I thought we had ruined the Nutcracker. Everyone was dancing with one glove. People who produced the show were, you know, hysterical that everyone was dancing with one glove. I thought it was all my fault, and this was like just a wild childhood experience. I had things like that happen that were so far from normal that it's actually like comical in retrospect. But I think the day-to-day was like really grounded. My grandmother and grandfather, before he passed, on my mother's side, really raised us. My grandmother cooked every meal we ate.
They raised them.
You know, most of my childhood.
Bibi.
And Bubby.
Bubby.
Yeah.
Bubby.
Yeah. So she taught me and was dancing with one glove. I thought it was all my fault, and this was like just a wild childhood experience. I had things like that happen that were so far from normal that it's actually like comical in retrospect. But I think the day-to-day was like really grounded. My grandmother
and grandfather, before he passed, on my mother's side, really raised us. My grandmother cooked every meal we ate for, most of my childhood.
Bibi.
And Bubby.
Bubby.
Yeah.
Bubby.
Yeah. So she taught me a type of unconditional love and tenderness. And I think more than anything, she was just this that's her. She's unbelievably nurturing. I'd come home from school and, before I'd be out of the shower, she would have laundered my clothes and folded them and put them back on my bed. She was always feeding me, and food for her was very much like an expression of love. I remember when I became a teenager and I'd sleep later and later, she'd wake me up for lunch. Just like, God forbid I wasn't being fed at all hours. But
I can see she means the world to you.
She does. She's 98 years old, and her health has suffered, and it's been a little bit of a difficult time for her. But I feel so strongly for me and my children to have the experience to be there for her in just like a small fraction of the way that she was there for me is such an extraordinary privilege. And for them to grow up with her at our table every single meal.
So
each
she
night,
has her mom's
her telling
mom.
her stories and stories of my
Wow.
mother, who they sadly didn't get to know.
Are you okay? No, I can see.
Yeah. No, yes, I'm great. I have a lot of love for this woman. So,
Oh, wow.
this doesn't happen to me often.
What is that mixture of
I
emotions?
wonder how does she really, oh, wow. I mean, just listening to her and seeing this side of her, it would lead me to believe that if there's any possibility of the rumors of what happened to her mom, I'm sure there's a lot of pent up ambition. You see, Melania kind of turning. He did it, Cisco, yeah. And then being pulled, and they really, I mean, there's a cost to a lot of things that they did. There comes a time that it comes to an end, and it feels like they know that it's coming to an end. Jack Smith was not playing with none of the Trumps. I mean, he has refiled the case all over again. He is for real about it. And she had to turn on her dad. And then her dad blamed her. This your sister's her fault. It's she's trying to turn the... No, dude. What you did, what you told us to do, what you taught us to do, your seed is in us, and the apple don't fall too far from the tree. And then how dare you? I mean, oh my God. How dare you? I mean, I can't believe it. I'm kind of feeling sorry. Oh my God, but how dare you be my parent who kind of forced us to do this for the sake of family, yes, and wealth. But when my back was against the wall, I think I made mention of this when it was going down. They saying you about to leave, man. And so you want me to get on the witness stand, put my hand on the Bible and lie? Or not take a deal and I have kids? No, this man got me red-handed. And now that I'm saying, no, I can't do it anymore, now you don't understand. Wow, so you really still want me to do this for the sake of y'all when y'all wouldn't do it for me? My dad? Yeah, no. How hurtful. That's such a betrayal. And then when it erupt, you put the whole family, I guess like they said, if you said enough, it becomes true. And he did it to her. He did it to her when it came down for court and trial. Just like he did it to Melania. Because Melania showed where the safe was. Behind, I think it was his mama's picture. Yeah. And she, Akeem Akbar him on the witness stand and pointed at her daddy. Instructed her to alter and lie to the banks. To fudge the paperwork. Yeah. It's time to come clean, baby. Take that deal. Better him than you. You got kids. I'm telling you now. So I kind of can feel that. And just to know, deep down inside, they know he did something to my mama. This is reminding me of Kim Porter and Quincy knowing deep down on the inside that he did something to his mama and tried to do something to his daddy. I'll be sure. He is the only kid of Diddy's, or what Diddy raised, that so far has not come up with S.A.ing somebody. Thank God he knew his dad. That's all I'm going to say.
Love, and we were talking before about connection, and it's been hard to see her now as she struggles, but she's it's a blessing to have her in
He's
our
trying to
home
protect his
and
sisters,
living with us.
making sure his sisters don't get pulled off
Very
into
special
that.
person.
He's the only one.
Maybe I'll have a tissue. Thank you.
It's a real credit to her.
Yeah.
It's often a testament to the person and the value that they've added to your life and how they were there for you, that you would feel.
And it's been hard to see her now.
I can see.
Yeah. No, I'm great. I have a lot of love for this woman. So. This doesn't happen to me often.
What is that mixture of emotions that you're experiencing?
She taught me so much just about love, and we were talking before about connection, and it's been hard to see her now as she struggles, but she's it's a blessing to have her in our home and living with us, and very special person.
That's all she have left on her mom's side. That's all she have left on her mom's side. She got her.
It's a real credit to her.
Yeah.
It's often a testament to the person and the value that they've added to your life and how they were there for you, that you would feel the way you do about her, and that's so visible in your face. She must have been quite formative.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So she's an amazing person.
You said that she was really taking care of you, and at sort of the age of 10. Mother and father, I'm assuming, very, very busy.
Yeah.
Explain that to me.
My mother was an incredible trailblazer, an amazing example for me of strength and resilience and glamour. And
You said that she was really taking care of you, and sort of the age of 10. Mother and father, I'm assuming, very, very busy.
yeah.
Explain that to me.
You know, my mother was an incredible trailblazer, an amazing example for me of strength and resilience and glamour and determination and ambition. And she was a great mother too. But she would also say, like, she couldn't do it alone. And she wasn't pretending she could. So she surrounded us with people who loved us. We had two amazing nannies. One of them worked for my mother until the day she died. The other worked for my mother until the day my mother died, and still works with us today. She worked after we grew up, she worked as my mother's personal assistant. So they were very much part of our lives and part of our extended family. And of course, my grandmother, who she trusted completely with us. So she showed me a lot at a time when...
Imagine making $453,000 in a single month as an affiliate marketer without...
You know, not many women were doing what my mother was doing inside the boardroom and on the construction sites all the time, by the way, with 5-inch heels and like perfectly coiffed hair. So she made it look incredibly easy, but it was and continues to be very challenging to balance work and life like that, especially at a time where what she was doing was so singular. So she very much part of our lives and part of our extended family. And of course, my grandmother, who she trusted completely with us. So she showed me a lot at a time when, you know, not many women were doing what my mother was doing inside the boardroom and on the construction sites all the time, by the way, with 5-inch heels and like perfectly coiffed hair. So she made it look incredibly easy, but it was and continues to be very challenging to balance work and life like that, especially at a time
She
where
loved
what
big
she was
hair,
doing
don't
was
care.
so singular. So she really...
Are y'all still with
my
me?
mother served as an unbelievable role model for me for what is possible. How to be an amazing mother who is loving and nurturing and fun and provides for her children, and also to be unabashedly and doggedly pursuing one's goals in a professional capacity. So she did that when she was married to my father. She did that following their divorce, and really was just an amazing mentor for me.
You're growing up in a context where your family are privileged. They have notoriety, and both parents are quite absent by way of them being so busy, and they're also kind of...
I wouldn't say absent, but you know, my mother wasn't home cooking us meals. My grandmother was, but my mother was home when we ate them, and then she'd go out again. You know, her and my father were actively building their life and pursuing their passions, and from person, and really was just an amazing mentor for me.
You're growing up in a context where your family are privileged. They have notoriety, and both parents are quite absent by way of them being so busy, and they're also kind of... I
wouldn't say absent, but you know, my mother wasn't home cooking us meals. My grandmother was, but my mother was home when we ate them, and then she'd go out again. You know, her and my father were actively building their life and pursuing their passions. And for my mom, much like me today, you know, one of her creative expressions came in the form of design and architecture. She wasn't absent, and you know, neither was my father. So he filled a more typical of that generation male role, where he was less like present. But there was never a doubt in my mind that I was his top priority and that he was available to me. So I used to call him from the payphone at Chapin. It was in a broom closet, and never once did he not pick up. And sometimes his office would be filled with people of, you know, he'd be in the middle of a deal or a negotiation or some politician or whatever it was, And he'd always put me on speakerphone and then start the conversation by telling everyone how I got great grades. And I'd start to blush. But he always picked up.
Did you
They
miss
weren't
him?
absent. Did I what?
Miss him?
No, because I didn't feel like he was absent. It was just different. Like he wasn't attending all of our sports games. But by the way, few parents were, 4 decades ago. There's a lot more sort of active participation, like the way I am in my kid's life, the way my husband is. I think it is, a little different, especially for fathers today than 30 years ago.
If I sat Ivana, your mother, here next to us at the same age you are now, what would be the fundamental differences in those individuals?
It's funny. I think back now, and my mother and I are both incredibly similar and very different. So she had like over-the-top style and glamour, and I think in some ways it was a reaction to the austerity and the control of growing up in a communist country and then Czechoslovakia. Like nobody was going to tell her what to do. Nobody was going to tell her what to say. So she actually would make my father look PC and was hysterical. I mean, I spent much of my childhood being like, oh, Mom, please stop. It was really interesting. I feel like today, because my mother passed away unexpectedly from a fall a few years ago, they were just like, I had a lot of questions. And
I know you did.
And I really dug into her story and her history and really studied her almost in a way that I wish I'd done with a communist country and then Czechoslovakia. Like nobody was going to tell her what to do. Nobody was going to tell her what to say. So she actually would make my father look PC and was hysterical. I mean, I spent much of my childhood being like, oh, Mom, please stop. It was really interesting. I feel like today, because my mother passed away unexpectedly from a fall a few years ago, they were just like, I had a lot of questions. And I really dug into her story and her history and really studied her almost in a way that I wish I had done when she was living and I could speak to her directly. And I think I understand her, because I'm at a level of maturity and have some of the same issues, having young children. And I think I understand her, though, better today than I did in some ways in her life. Like I see her more fully.
And what did you understand more about her that you didn't understand while she was here after she passed?
She wrote a book in the final years of her life that talked a lot more about her childhood. And I think not uncommon for people who have experienced, a lot of hardship. Sometimes they compartmentalize and it's like forward only. And this whole part of our life she never talked about. And I think when you're younger, you ask a lot less questions. Like now I would tell everyone who's listening, like really ask the questions, especially if people are a bit of a vault and are less inclined to look back in the past, because all of her life experience very much shaped her.
This was a beautiful photo that I found.
That was in Mar-a-Lago on my childhood bed. Very ornate. Yeah. She was really, she was impossibly glamorous.
Yeah, I couldn't find a photo where she didn't like an incredible
No.
photos. 9 years old, your mother and father split up, divorced. That was quite well publicised. Your father had an affair with somebody. And this is actually where the quote that I referenced earlier about trust comes in, because quite remarkably,
the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that the Quran will intercede on your behalf on the Day of Judgment. And one of the best ways to get the Quran to plead on your behalf is to...
I need for y'all to hit the like button. It's almost 3 o'clock in the morning. I shouldn't have to keep stopping and asking y'all to hit the like button.
reporters were waiting outside of your school to take photos of you and ask questions.
Her, though, better today than I did in some ways in her life. Like I see her more fully.
And what did you understand more about her that you didn't understand while she was here after she passed?
She wrote a book in the final years of her life that talked a lot more about her childhood. And I think not uncommon for people who have experienced, a lot of hardship.
Yeah.
Sometimes they compartmentalize and it's like forward only. And this whole part of her life she never talked about. And I think when you're younger, you ask a lot less questions. Like now, I would tell everyone who's listening, like, really ask the questions, especially if people are a bit of a vault and are less inclined to look back in the past, because all of her life experience very much shaped her.
This was a beautiful photo that I found of you.
That was in Mar-a-Lago on my childhood bed. Very ornate. Yeah. She was really, she was impossibly. People are a bit of a vault and are less inclined to look back in the past, because all of her life experience very much shaped her.
This was a beautiful photo that I found of you.
That was in Mar-a-Lago on my childhood bed. Very ornate. Yeah. She was really, she was impossibly glamorous.
Yeah, I couldn't find a photo where she didn't like incredible
No.
photos. 9 years old, your mother and father split up, divorced. It was quite well publicized that your father had an affair with somebody. And this is actually where the quote that I referenced earlier about trust comes in, because quite remarkably, reporters were waiting outside of your school to take photos of you and ask questions about your father's affair. And the quote that I read in GQ said, this is a quote from you, "If I didn't have that lesson, I don't know that I'd be tough. It taught me not to trust anybody. You can never let your guard down. And I never really have since that time."
So that's probably the 25-year-old version of me. as there's a lot of truth in it. And I think certain defense mechanisms we create for ourselves are actually healthy.
Yeah.
Because it was healthy for me not to be trusting before I had honed my own instincts and had learned to understand people and read people. So I think there was nothing wrong with a 25 or 27-year-old with my lived experience answering that way. But I do let people in now.
I completely understand that. Like, every part of me completely understands that reaction to that event at 9 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, reporters being at your school, or just generally, how that must have been as a kid in school.
Well, there was a level of aggression that, even today wouldn't exist with the paparazzi then, to be shouting things and, reading quotes from tabloids to me as I'm leaving school. To put this in context, this divorce apparently garnered more headlines than the O.J. Simpson trial. So that was a lot. The difference is that once I stepped into my home, it was a safe place. Unless the TVs were blaring, which obviously they weren't during that period of time. So I think the difference today for parents, and that I think about a lot with my kids, is you just can't protect them in the same way. Social media amplifies everything. So while that experience with those reporters was extremely combative and aggressive and totally unacceptable in a way that I don't think society would allow today, it's very much more in children's faces. They can acquire the information they need, and obviously when you're young, you're curious.
Again, I'm trying to world build in my head, because I think understanding that early context helps us understand everybody. And if that was my early context, I think you'd see the fingerprints on me today.
Well, I think we're all, I think about it with my own children.
The fact is, we've come here right now. Millions of us light workers have incarnated on this planet right now.
Can I get y'all to hit the like button, please? An hour and 19 minutes in. Hit the like button.
I grew up with a lot of privilege, and I've lived an extraordinary life, and I never worried where my next meal came from. I never worried about being able to pay for the best school that I was able to get into. And so by so many metrics, my life was extremely comfortable and easy. And I do think back, like some of the challenges, the moments that were disgusting or uncomfortable, or even just the fact of my parents' marriage being torn apart. I think those create the pressure that turns you into who you become.
Did you know what it meant at 9 years old? Because I
No,
transport myself back.
I probably, then you couldn't look things up as easily.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I don't know what I thought. I think I was probably more scared than anything of like the mob and the lights and the surprise of it all.
But did you know what them separating meant? Like, did they have a conversation with you and say, we're splitting up, or was it?
They did, and I think the experience I had, albeit it was televised, but it was very much like any other child who's 9, whose parents are separating. You start to wonder, will I be loved? Will I be forgotten? What does this mean? You want them to get back together. You're hoping, you're trying to create peace between them, rekindle the love, all the things that I think are like deeply normal and human.
And you found out about divorce by seeing a newspaper on your way to school one day?
Yes. That wasn't the plan. They used to have the big news boxes with the newspaper, so.
What did it say?
My parents had sat me down that afternoon. That's when they had attended to, but it had come out in the morning.
What did the newspaper say?
I don't remember. I remember the photo. There was a picture of them with a rip down the middle. It was not an easy situation for a child, but that experience, I always look for, like, what is the positive in any situation? And, the positive for me and my siblings were...
Do y'all think, I need to do a poll, do y'all think that she knows that her dad, there's a great chance of her dad unalived her mom? And that was years after, I guess they were still doing business together. I don't know why I feel like she, deep down inside, she knows.
Afternoon, that's when they had attended to, but it had come out in the morning.
What did the newspaper say?
I don't remember. I remember the photo. There was a picture of them with a rip down the middle. It was not an easy situation for a child, but that experience, I always look for, like, what is the positive in any situation? And, the positive for me and my siblings were we really, like, bonded in a different type of way because we were going through it together.
It must be so interesting being in your shoes because, look, me and you are both aware that people, they want to drive a wedge between you and your father. They want a headline, they want you to say something. I can see it within you that you have a real desire to be, like, open and transparent. But if I was in your shoes, I'd be thinking, like, everyone's trying to trip me out. Everyone's trying to make a headline on me and my life. They want to... It must be so interesting being... It must be so interesting being in your shoes because... look, me and you are both aware that people, they want to drive a wedge between you and your father. They want a headline, they want you to say something. I can see it within you that you have a real desire to be, like, open and transparent. But if I was in your shoes, I'd be thinking, like, everyone's trying to trip me out. Everyone's trying to make a headline on me and my life. They want to drive a wedge between me and my father. It's difficult. It must be difficult. Like, even I think about it as a podcast. The podcast gets big. I don't know if I say the wrong line.
I think one of the things I've learned under moments in my life of tremendous sort of pressure and scrutiny is to, like, find the signal in the noise. And that's probably the thing that has been most helpful to me. It can become quite turbulent. I find myself sometimes literally, like, dancing in the eye of the hurricane. It's been many years of my life, but there's a lot of, like, peace within me. So I just don't get distracted by the outside noise. And I think if you know what you stand for, then it really is just noise.
When did you have to learn this? Because, am I right in thinking, this is the first time that I saw the Trump family during The Apprentice.
Okay.
So, obviously, growing up as a kid, big fan of business.
Yeah.
We had the UK Apprentice, but the US one was much more interesting in my opinion. So this is when I first understand who your father is and who you are. What was the sentiment around you as a family at this point? Because, again, people can't remember.
Big retailers just banned our line.
Oh, what did I just do? Sorry.
And honestly, we're not surprised because we didn't build this thing to sit on a
pre-vortex.
It was the biggest show in the world at one point. It was this massive phenomenon. You know, he had been to like find the signal in the noise. And that's probably the thing that has been most helpful to me. It can become quite turbulent. I find myself sometimes literally like dancing in the eye of the hurricane. It's been many years of my life, but there's a lot of like peace within me. So I just don't get distracted by the outside noise. And I think if you know what you stand for, then it really is just noise.
When did you have to learn this? Because am I right in thinking, this is the first time that I saw the Trump family during The Apprentice.
Okay.
So obviously, you know, growing up as a kid, big fan of business.
Yeah.
We had the UK Apprentice, but the US one was much more interesting in my opinion. So this is when I first understand who your father is and who you are. What was the sentiment around you as a family at this point? Because again, people can't remember pre-vortex.
It was the biggest show in the world at one point. It was this massive phenomenon. You know, he had been very famous in sort of New York and in real estate and in business circles, but this kind of like, it expanded awareness of him beyond those New York circles onto a global stage. So there was a lot of attention and a lot of excitement. You know, he was very similar to how he is now. He said exactly what he was thinking, which could be polarizing at times, but it's part of what people loved about him. I think the thing about my father and my mother is they're like deeply authentic. So you can disagree, but there's a certain amount of like respect for the candor of it, and the lack of fear to say what you're thinking, because so many people are sort of afraid to be their true selves.
You're more delicate with your words.
Yeah, but I know exactly who I am. That's why the noise doesn't affect me. I'm really proud of the fact that, you know, I've lived through some incredibly intense times where people are taking cheap shots and swinging, and I don't punch back because I don't believe in sort of spending my time and focus, like being combative, like jumping into that particular arena and to like the nasty swirl of social media. It's not for me. And I've been consistent in that my whole life. And I feel like that sets an amazing example to my children.
Where did you learn that? What is it that you've read? What are the sort of...
You just have to be yourself, and you have to be true to yourself. And it's like, I don't allow that noise to distract me. We were talking earlier about Stoicism. I think like Marcus Aurelius' meditations is so informative on so many levels. I mean, here you have somebody who is literally an emperor, and he's writing this journal in a tent in a battlefield. So his perspective is amazing. And he once wrote that the soul becomes dyed the color of its thoughts. And I think about that all the time. The cost to me of living in a way that's inconsistent and not aligned with what feels right, what models the right thing for my children, what feels inherently true to me, it's too expensive. It's too expensive for my soul, so I won't do it. So, you know, there have been times when the incoming and I say, well, but that isn't right, or this isn't right, or I want to correct it. And then I say, like, what's the cost of doing it? Thoreau has another great quote. It's something paraphrasing to the effect of, you know, the cost of anything is the amount of your life you're willing to exchange for it. I focus on those things that like elevate my soul, my joy, my happiness, my connection to the people I love and care about.
Have you always been there? Because you seem more stoic now, but you know...
I'm much more naturally like this. Like, yeah. I feel things, like a lot of things.
You're a bit of an empath, right?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
I have not always been like this. Like, I had to work to be like this. And I had to, I think, mature. And I had to gain, like, confidence. And it took me a while to really let people in. And I think it was after my children were born that I really experienced a different type of love. It, like, cracks you open.
Oh, yeah.
And you're never the same, you know? And you want more of that feeling. Like, I'm very intentional about everything that I do. Even sitting here today, like I have zero interest in spending 2 hours having a conversation with somebody I think is like a bully, because they get good podcasts, you know? Like I like having conversations with people I think are interesting and curious, but in business as well. Like I'm I do less things and I do them with a lot more focus and intention.
You've lived an extraordinary life and it's a very anomalous one, but actually the lesson there about being intentional in every sense of the word, not just with what you do every day, but also what you let occupy your mind, is one that I think...
One tiny flaw ruins most grounding shoes, but grounded footwear fixed it.
I'm glad
You see,
she
most
told on
grounding
her
shoes use
dad.
a single copper ring that pushed through the sole to create conductivity, which sounds great.
I'm glad she told on him.
In theory, but here's the problem. It only works when you're standing on natural...
I'm glad she told.
Everybody listening might derive a lot of value from, because we...
Okay, I'm gonna pause y'all until y'all get the likes up. I keep asking for y'all to do it without me having to pause. And that's not working for me at 2 in the, almost 3 in the morning. No. Hit the like button. Hit those 3 dots at the top right corner. Hit those 3 dots.
Everybody lives on a spectrum of the world clawing at them to deviate from who they are. One end of the spectrum, if I take myself back to when I was, 16 years old, the world, other than my mother telling me she wanted me to go be a doctor, lawyer, whatever, the world wasn't really pulling me away from myself. But then on the other end of the spectrum, I'm 33 now, every time I have a podcast guest on, someone's mad at me. And everything I say can be spun and whatever. So you also, on this side of the spectrum, you have to get really, really clear, as you said, on who you are and what matters.
Well, I think that's key. If you don't know who you are, the mob wins.
Oh, 100%.
Because they tell you who you are.
Yeah.
And then you start to believe it. Once you know who you are, you feel sorry for the people who are screaming at each other on social media. It takes a beat to get there. I think it takes a lot of work to really understand yourself. And I think sometimes modern society, it praises sort of speed and fast pace and accessibility and being available and responding quickly. Then people wonder why don't they know themselves? Why aren't they connected to something bigger? And they're not taking the time. I take time to shut down and really go inward and ask myself every time I have a big decision, what feels right. And even if it's hard to make a decision, whether it's no or yes, if it feels aligned with your values and who you are, it never is a mistake, ever.
You grew up in the, with a family and a father that are very prominent. At some point, do you have to make the decision to become your own person? Because I was wondering if in that context, there's a pressure to kind of be the same person in every regard, to believe all the same things, to live the same life, to go the same path. Yeah. Is there some point in your journey where you go, do you know what, I've actually got to figure out, I can see a little smirk in the corner of your mouth.
Well, no, I think about it with my own children because as a parent, it's very easy to see them as, a lot of parents, they view their children as extensions of themselves. And I really try not to do that. They are their own people, just like I'm my own person. Sometimes in the context of a broader public narrative, everything's sort of commingled and related, but we're all our own people. We obviously have conditioning, we have learned behaviors, we have some of which are great, some of which we spend part of our adulthood unwinding, but we're all fundamentally unique and special. And I work really hard to make sure my kids see themselves, each of them individually, that they know how much I love them as perfect, complete human beings, not I love you because of this accomplishment or because of this sort of external validation that you've received because you're sort of perfect as you are and in your essence. So My parents taught me a lot.
Inside the Silver Star Survival Package, you'll find a covert, all-in-one solar briefcase generator called the Alpha Key.
A lot. I love them so much. I'm like them in some ways. I'm very dissimilar to them in other ways. But even though I was like the peacemaker in our house, I was also like very like true to myself. And they created, and I give them credit for this, they created an environment where like dissent was okay. And so I could agree or disagree and share it with each of them and do so respectfully and privately. And that was our home.
You started off in real estate. You worked in it sounded like to me you were basically an intern at a different real estate company before moving into the family business. And in the family business, you know, heavily male-dominated space. I heard you talk about how actually being a woman in that context proved to be, in your mind, an advantage of sorts. What is the context there? Again, I'm in 2026 right now, so I don't have the perspective of what it was like to be a young woman in the real estate industry, I'm presuming in New York, some sort of 20 years ago.
Well, I think I was like underestimated twice. First, being the child of accomplished parents, there was an expectation that on one hand, some people thought I was like a savant because I was their child, but most people thought they would be, that I would phone it in, that I would lack sort of the thought process, the ambition, the preparedness. So I always worked like twice as hard as everyone else to sort of prove my worth and prove my ability to be in these rooms where truthfully, oftentimes I was in them before I was prepared to be in them. So that was, you know, on my mind. But I think being underestimated is not a bad thing. I think it's like a very powerful thing, actually. And it almost always worked to the detriment of the person who underestimated me. So I think if you're somebody who's prepared and somebody underestimates you, well, guess what? They're not. So when you're dealing with people who are extremely accomplished, like do the work. Like know what you're doing because probably they haven't done the work when they know they're dealing with you. And I think as a young woman in real estate, especially, you know, there were women in sales and there were women in marketing, but there were very few women in development and construction and finance and acquisitions. And I think I harnessed both the belief, some of it may be stemming from my own insecurity, but the belief that the people would underestimate me, I harnessed that like sort of fear, that sentiment, and I used it to sort of propel me. And I used it to give me motivation and drive. And then I also would use it against the people who underestimated me, just because I was always prepared. I was over-prepared. I always did the work.
I heard you described as, from people that worked with you at the time, a natural-born deal maker. And this kind of overlays with what you're saying there, that if someone underestimates you, they're actually setting themselves up to be surprised or...
Well, I'd prefer to be underestimated than overestimated any day of the week.
Give me specifics on what environment that creates for you to then win in a deal.
I think in negotiation, it's like incredibly important to know what the other person wants. Sometimes you can learn that through research. Very infrequently, though. Like, you have to listen. Like, you're probably a great negotiator because you're an incredible listener. Silence can also be a weapon. People get very uncomfortable in moments of silence, and then they start talking. And I think the more you can get a person to share with you what they consider to be a win, the more you can potentially accomplish something where you really have like a mutual win-win. Like I've seen negotiations where you give up very little, but the person feels incredibly happy because it's what they want.
Yeah.
Right? Now, when you're dealing with like a negotiation that's purely price, that's kind of different. That's like a very simple transaction. It's, you know, but very few negotiations are purely that. You know, first and foremost in a negotiation, like make sure you understand what the other person wants, because you may be able to give it to them at very little cost, and then everyone's happy. And I also think there's a lot of value in like authentically building relationships. So, you know, some of the best deals I ever did were derivatives of really like getting to know someone like authentically and genuinely, and they want you to win, you want them to win, And those are like really beautiful types of transactions. And, you know, I believe in, you know, a lot of the projects I'm working on now are about like creating things. Like I like building tangible things. I like creating things that that
Yeah, Joe,
uplift. I like solving
I'm back
challenging
remembering
problems.
the child
And you don't
trafficking
do that alone. You do that
that
through
went on in
partnership.
Mar-a-Lago.
You do that through coalitions of people who share your passion and interests, and that's very rewarding.
When you hire people, what are you looking for your businesses? Are there, I mean, everyone's got their own hiring bias, and it often stems from their past experiences, who's burnt them in the past. When you're looking to hire someone for one of your organizations or for some of the projects we'll talk about in a second, what are the key characteristics?
If it isn't valid, we promise a tenfold refund. This denture can be successfully worn in just 1 second and is suitable.
I think first and foremost, you want someone with a strong sense of self and a strong like orientation towards like agency, like somebody who has agency. It's very hard to teach people, you know, you can have a brilliant person, but if they don't have like good judgment, or if they're not like a self-starter, it's very hard to give them that. It's very hard to sort of give them good judgment. And some of it's like street smarts, right? We talked before about, you know, how can you both be trustworthy and not be disappointed or burned too often? You have an instinct about a person, and you can read a room, and that's like EQ skills. And those are a little bit harder to teach. So I look for that. I look for good people. At the end of the day, like, I don't want to do a deal with, I don't want to work with people I don't enjoy, that I don't think are like good people, because I don't want to spend my time with somebody who I don't trust or who I don't respect. So that's like really core and fundamental for me. You know, for somebody who's working with me, I actually tell my kids this all the time, because I think so much of the outside world is like, impress me by what you do, like impress me by what you accomplish, the grades, the trophies, the badges of like external validation and success. Like our whole life is oriented towards that, the validation that comes from the outside world. So like I always want my kids to know like how I'm going to validate them is like, be a good person. Like you want to impress me, like be a good person.
Was that the case for you? Because when I look
Probably not.
I look at the Trump family, for me as an outsider, it looked like a competition between siblings, and even when I think about your father.
Yeah, I think because we're so competitive and hard. Yeah, no, I think it all like worked out, and we're all, I like to think, you know, my siblings and I grew up with like good values, and but no, like we were in a more like, I was like very competitive with my siblings. Like, you know, my mom was like a disciplinarian. There was like a high expectation of like performance and success.
And when you're in that, when you're calling collect your father, he's reciting your great grades to the room of people he's in.
Yeah, no, that mattered. And it matters to a lot of parents. And by the way, it's not bad, like having an incredibly high standard. And to some degree, yeah, and I think, look, I think it's a lot of parents, like I think especially, like my mom was an immigrant to this country, there's like a high standard.
But he wanted to deport immigrants.
Like, humor fools, right? One of the things I'm most proud of, I look at my daughter, and there's no bar I could set for her.
All of them will have to go, y'all.
The bar she sets for herself isn't higher.
All of them.
So like I actually view my job as a parent with her is to like give her permission to not like strive for perfection.
You go on to build a business in the jewelry industry and fashion industry. I was reading about, there was a point in your career where you were offered a job by Anna Wintour at Vogue, and I think your father did kind of want you to go in that direction, but you wanted to go in the real estate business direction.
She called me actually on the day I graduated from university. I went to Wharton School of Business at University of Pennsylvania, and she offered me a job at Vogue, and I was like incredibly honored and flattered and groggy, because she called me at 8 o'clock in the morning, which calling a college student at 8 o'clock in the morning, you might as well call them at 4:30 in the morning, you know, like that was, but I was like deeply aware from when I was a young girl that like I wanted to go into real estate. Life has taken me in different directions, and interestingly now I'm returning with some amazing projects back to my real estate roots, but I love architecture, I love design, I love it as an expression of self. You look at a city skyline and it's an expression of like a vision for of hope and optimism, and the amount of courage that took to build each of those buildings, and it's extraordinary.
But you did go into the fine jewelry at 26 years old, and then
Yeah.
at 33 you launched IvankaTrump.com, and you were in a huge amount of major retailers, including Nordstrom, Neiman Marcus.
Because she called me at 8 o'clock in the morning, which calling a college student at 8 o'clock in the morning, you might as well call them at 4:30 in the morning, you know, like that was, but I was like deeply aware from when I was a young girl that like I wanted to go into real estate. Life has taken me in different directions, and interestingly now I'm returning some amazing projects back to my real estate roots, but I love architecture, I love design, I love it as an expression of self. You look at a city skyline and it's an expression of like a vision for of hope and optimism, and the amount of courage that took to build each of those buildings, and it's extraordinary.
But you did go into the fine jewelry at 26 years old, and then
Yeah.
at 33 you launched IvankaTrump.com, and you were in a huge amount of major retailers, including Nordstrom, Neiman Marcus, and that's really also, that's what I knew you first for. I knew you for running a fashion business, which was doing exceptionally well. I think from what I read, it was making hundreds of millions of dollars.
I just made a $27 ebook in 2 minutes using AI. Watch how I did it, so you can do it too. Here I am.
And then you shut it down.
Yeah. Yeah. It was kind of like lightning in a bottle. I caught a moment. So I was still sort of leading the charge at our family real estate business. I had young children at home, or was just starting to have children when I first launched fine jewelry. Ultimately, we ended up having 11 different categories: apparel, footwear, sunglasses, fragrance. But we created an accessibly priced line that was feminine and beautiful, but for like a multidimensional woman. Like at the time when I was coming up, the outfits that women were buying for work were so far from aspirational, and they couldn't transition with the woman to the date night they would have that evening or afterward drinks with their girlfriends. It was like nobody was posting on Instagram like what they were wearing to work. And so we thought, like, let's bridge the gap and create something for a modern woman, and it caught fire, and it was an amazing success. We were doing close to $800 million in sales annually when I shut it down, when I went into government. It was great, but...
You were doing 800 million in sales annually when you shut it down.
Yeah.
Why did you shut it down?
I went into government, and you always have to sort of be moving forward, and I had built a team of women who were oriented towards forward momentum, and I had to put it on ice. And this was all just part of the rules of complying with the Office of Government Ethics. So they basically look at everything you have and they say, sell this, put this into a trust, do this, do that, do this. So you do that, and for my own business, they weren't allowed to use my image. They weren't allowed to grow the business in terms of new accounts or internationally. And that was fine for a moment, but at the end of the day, you need like growth. And so I thought it would be easier to end on a high note than to allow the business to sort of stagnate. And I also felt like for myself, I'm always looking forward. Like I don't like to look back. And I feel the experience of this new experience, I mean, serving was so expanding.
Most people wouldn't give up an $800 million annual business to go into government. Why did you?
You know, I
and it's
thought,
your baby as well, you know, it's like...
Yeah, I thought about the version of me in 40 years that when asked the question to serve by my father, who at the time knew no one in Washington, D.C. at all, said no and just proceeded with life as usual. And that didn't like sit right with me. So I had no intention of serving. And a few weeks after he won, he asked Jared and me to go with him and sort of help him navigate this new environment. And my eyes grew big, and he joked with me. He's like, but I have to warn you, they're going to come at you hard. They're probably going to hate you. You're too young. And he like rattled. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, what? That was like the anti-sale, but you know, he asked us for help. And I feel incredibly...
If your tummy looks like this, do 4 Tai Chi moves, 2 minutes each.
privilege that he gave us the opportunity to serve a country we love so much. We hadn't been expecting it. We hadn't set up our lives for it. We were loving the path we were on and the work we were doing. But you also, can't put your head in the sand. And like life had changed. As much as I'd like to say, like, oh, he wins business as usual. There is no business as usual. Your life has changed.
You didn't choose this, though. In fact, you didn't choose most of these things. I look at your life and I go, from a very young age, you've not chosen the context which you've been thrust into because of your father's ambitions. And, I mean, I can see it in your face that it kind of rings true.
But I think that's true for all of us, right? To some degree, like, our path is determined by our circumstance.
Not really.
I wonder why she really coming out now. She never does this.
With politics and the presidency, but
even from 9 years old, you're not choosing to leave school and have reporters treat you like that, and you're not choosing these other things along the way. And then your father decides he wants to be president of the United States. It's not like he had a political career where he like built up slowly. It's like he woke up one day and was like,
I was drinking water from a fire hose for all of us. It was a lot. Normally you cut your teeth on some local election as a family, had the experience. The first time he ever ran for office was president, and he won. So it was a radical adjustment period for all of us. But
did you think you'd
win? Did it. Oh, yeah, I did. I mean, it was hard to believe myself because everyone was saying that he wouldn't. And I'd say, well, these people probably know what they're talking about, but it felt like he would. And, so for me, that time was extraordinary because I really believed, I lived in New York City. I thought I was surrounded by diverse minds and opinions and perspectives and viewpoints. And I really thought I had sort of a lot of exposure to ideas. And his campaign ripped it open for me in that I realized the bubble that I was in. And suddenly I got out into the country and I heard from people who had very divergent views on a number of issues. Some of it reinforced my existing beliefs. Other times it completely changed my perspective and orientation. So it was extremely mind expanding. So when you ask why didn't I go back to what I was doing? I think you get thrown into something and you learn and you grow and you change. And I felt as challenging it was as that moment in my life to say yes when my father asked us to go help him. I felt like it was an amazing privilege to be able to serve. So
New Year always has a strange energy to it because people start talking about their goals, fresh starts, and new habits. But the reality is that most people carry the same ideas, but they've been an incredibly effective way of scaling our sales. And that's interesting.
No, it was,
That if it got so bad in the US, if it got so bad in the US, is you find it hard to figure out where sales are. So about 10 years ago, I started using Pipedrive in my former company. That if it got so bad in the US, he would never rule it out totally. He thought that if it got so bad in the US, it's visible through one dashboard, a visual pipeline showing every deal, what stage it's in, what needs to happen. That if it got so bad in the US, he would never rule it out totally. He thought he would win because he's never gone into anything to lose, as I think you said. And even in 1980, in an interview with Rona Beret, can't pronounce that name, he said, maybe I'd run for president, I don't know. Did you have any sense that this was at all on the horizon?
Not really.
And that's interesting.
No, it was, it was actually where we discussed things that weren't sort of the normal, how was your day at school? We spoke a lot about real estate and about building and
Hold on, I did something wrong. Hold on.
I don't know. Did you have any sense that this was at all on the horizon?
Not really.
And that's interesting.
No, it was, it was actually where we discussed things that weren't sort of the normal, how was your day at school? We spoke a lot about real estate and about building, and we're going to go into the family business. And I do think he sort of toyed with it in his mind for a while. I do remember once thinking it was real. I was 16 and I was at boarding school and I called him up. I go, oh my God, I read that you're going to run for president. This is going to ruin my life. I think I was like hysterical, and he's like, "Don't worry about it, not happening." I think he was thinking about the options he was given as a voter, and he was dissatisfied. And I think he was
how he
beginning to
think we
formulate
feel
his
now.
perspective on what he would do differently. But it was
How
not,
the heck
my
do he
childhood,
think
that was
we
not
feel
an ambition
now?
of his that was at least articulated
Isn't that hard?
to
I mean,
us.
just the
Some of the
thought of
ideas,
that.
you mentioned that Oprah interview, he was talking about trade policy being deeply unfair to American workers. His viewpoint remained consistent over time and remains consistent to this day on exactly that, about trade policy, and many of the things he articulated then are very true for him to this day.
And then in 2015, when you're 33, my age, you learn 2 weeks before he announces that he's going to announce that he wants to run for president.
Thousands of women are raving about this needle-free filler that erases sagging mouth corners, jowls.
Again, how do you receive that? Is there not like an existential panic? Like you
We
had when you were
came
16?
together as a family in Bedminster, and he shared with us his intention, and he asked me to introduce him. I said to him, I'm like, well, are you really doing this? Are you really going to do this? He was coming down the escalator, and I'm trying to introduce him and give this speech. I'm like, is he going to get up here and actually? It was so quick. But I think he had debated it in his mind for a long time, and then when he pulled the trigger, it was full steam.
Life hasn't been the same since, in many respects.
No, it hasn't. But it's been an extraordinary ride. There have been highs and there have been lows, but we've done a lot of living, so a lot of living.
Of which you spent 4 years working in the White House. Some of your sort of key headline achievements are doubling the child tax credit from $1,000 to $2,000, benefiting 40 million Americans with an average of $2,200 per year, helping secure paid family leave for federal workers, helping pass the Great
Ain't none of that
American Outdoors Act,
working
which is
now.
one of the largest conservative bills since the national park system was created, leading efforts to modernize career and technical education, providing $1.3 billion annually to over 13 million students, and helping to pass 9 pieces of legislation combating human trafficking and child exploitation. And then it ended. Were you happy it ended? Because I sat with Michelle Obama and she seemed happy.
I left it all in the field. I don't look back and say, I don't have regrets. I worked as hard as I could, and I'm incredibly proud of what I was able to accomplish in those 4 years, and I don't regret it in any way. But it's a sacrifice to my children, and it's hard work. So I feel both incredibly privileged for the opportunity, but also I don't have what they refer to as Potomac fever. There's some people that once they have the experience of being in those rooms and close to that type of power, they just hang around the hoop, constantly cycling back in. I feel like I wasn't expecting to serve in this capacity, at least not at this stage of my life. My father asked me to help him. We uprooted our lives and went and did just that and scored a lot of wins. I mean, you think about something like the child tax credit, 40 million American families benefited from that policy, an average of $2,400 in their pockets. That's extraordinarily meaningful and consequential, and I'm so proud to have been able to do that. 9 pieces of human trafficking legislation, the work that I did around vocational education and
Did she
skills
say
training, which is
human
all the more
trafficking?
relevant as
Human trafficking? How do you feel about that now? Or did you know what was going on at that time when you... Because, yeah, you did. I mean, I'm not about to get lost in the sauce with, with this kind of touchy, soft-spoken interview, because just like Ghislaine Maxwell, just like Erica Kirk, y'all knew what was going on. It was just a part of y'all life. I mean, what did you think those little girls with those werewolf-ass men standing and hovering over them. What? You were there. It's in the Epstein files. And then so it's like Ghislaine Maxwell had a organization that she was a part of about foster kids or something. It was always something with the kids. Erica Kirk and Romania Angels. That was a part of your trafficking. Act like you was concerned about them, but really you were vultures, picking and choosing, selling dreams to these kids, to bait them in, to groom them. So you almost had me. And I have to remember who you really are as I listen to you, because you were very much a part of it. You know what was going on, and you went along with it.
We sort of surf the oncoming tsunami that is AI. You know, the fact that we were able to get the private sector to commit to skilling or reskilling 16 million American workers. The fact that we were able to facilitate the creation of 1 million apprenticeship opportunities in the United States. Like, these are deeply meaningful. So I'm so proud of my service. I feel deeply honored that he trusted me to pursue these different verticals and to work alongside of him. And I also know that it's really hard. And for my children, you know, my first responsibility is to be their mom. It was true then as well, of course, and I did the best I could every single day to be everywhere I needed to be. But my kids are a different age now, and there's a finite period of time before they leave our home. I think, you know, I look at my teenage daughter, she's 14, and even if, like, a quarter of my interactions with her through her closed bedroom door, like, I need to be present and I need to be there. It's not theoretical for me, because now I know the sacrifice that they would have to bear, the cost to them of if I went back into service. And I'm not willing to let them pay that price. So for me, it's like actually a rather easy decision. I made it immediately, you know, that in this moment I'm where I need to be. It's also a different time. You know, now my father has a deep bench of people raising their hand who want to help and participate. That wasn't true before. He's really refined his policies, his beliefs, and has a lot of conviction in terms of what he wants to do. So I feel like for him, it's amazing. He's got the team he needs. And for me, I think, you know, my priorities are my family, and that just feels really good and right for me.
What weren't you prepared for? I asked the same question to Michelle when she was here about, you know, you get that phone call from your dad and he says, come help. One has a vision of what that might look like, but there's surprises. Michelle talked to me about so many of the things she had no idea would be the case.
I wasn't prepared for, you're not prepared for any of it. There's nothing that trains you for the experience. And I think one of the things you realize pretty quickly is, like, power, just like money, makes people more of what they already are. And you see that very much in playing out in politics and in life, right? I also think you realize people are just people. Like, you look at, and I had exposure to some of the great leaders of business, and now I was being exposed to leaders on a global stage of countries. Sometimes they were monarchies, other times they were elected democracies, and then all sorts of variants of that, you know, where, and you realize at the end of the day, like, people are people. You know, some of them, their kids don't speak to them. They got in a fight with their wife that morning. They're just people. And now some of them feel extraordinarily historic. You meet a person and say, this person feels consequential. Others of them, you leave and say, I wonder how this person ever got elected to this, you know, high office. But I think it removes the veil and the mystery, and I think it removed for me a lot of any of, like, intimidation I may have in, like, interacting with another human being.
your security situation must have changed quite considerably.
It did, yeah.
You know, and because politics is a dangerous game. I think I heard something that said being president is the most dangerous job in the world when you look at the fatality rate. And obviously we've seen political assassinations in this country even in recent times, but your father was also shot at, hit in the ear when he was on the campaign trail more recently. What's that been like, and what does it actually, can you give me any specifics on what that actually means? When you become involved in politics, how does life change from a security perspective?
Yeah. I think, well, it changes radically. Now we're protected by U.S. Secret Service, and I'm so grateful to the men and women who take care of my family, took care of my father, protected him, and risking their own lives to do so, and now do so for me and my children. So very grateful to all of them. But it's scary. We live in very troubling times, and the fact that there is a correlation between service and violence is terrible in and of itself. But that's the world we live in. So I have to acknowledge that reality and defend my family as best I can, and make sure they're protected. And I'm very fortunate the Secret Service are the best in the world at doing that.
Where were you in 2024 in July when you heard the news that your father had been shot in the ear? There was an assassination attempt on his life. Do you remember where you were? What's that like as a daughter? What are all the feelings and thoughts?
I was in Bedminster, New Jersey, and there was a lot of commotion, and the televisions were on, so I saw it almost immediately. Not in my house, I actually don't love watching television, but out by the pool and the bistro, and it was almost real time. It was before he had stood back up that I had seen what was transpiring, and two of my children were there. So my first reaction was to turn them away, but it was incredibly difficult. Interestingly, I knew real time in that moment that he was fine. I just knew that it wasn't his time. So I was horrified, and I was scared, and I was protective of my children, but I didn't believe the worst possible outcome had transpired. Thank God. And thank God it hadn't.
She didn't wait what?
And then I saw him that night when he came home from the hospital, because he was also staying. That morning he had left from risking their own lives to do so, and now do so for me and my children. So very grateful to all of them. But it's
Hey, seriously?
scary. We live in
Hey, Maria.
very troubling times, and the fact that there is a correlation between service and violence is terrible in and of itself. But that's the world we live in. So I have to acknowledge that reality, and defend my family as best
Have you
I
reached
can,
out
and make sure they're
to
protected. And I'm very
have you
fortunate
chatted
the Secret
with
Service are
support?
the best in the world at doing that.
Where were you in 2024 in July when you heard the news that your father had been shot in the ear? There was an assassination attempt on his life. Do you remember where you were? What's that like as a daughter? What are all the feelings and thoughts?
I was in Bedminster, New Jersey, and there was a lot of commotion, and
Trump is
the
not
televisions were
CIA.
on, so I saw it almost
He's being used by the
immediately. Not in my
CIA. He
house.
is not CIA.
Don't love watching television, but out by the pool and the bistro, and
He most definitely is being used
it was
by
almost
them.
real time. It was
The
before
Mossad.
he had stood back up that I had seen what was transpiring, and two of my children were there. So my first reaction was to turn them away, but
they tried to play with him.
it was incredibly difficult. Interestingly, I knew real time in that moment.
And they finna do away
that
with
he's
him
fine.
like he did away with
I had-
Charlie Kirk. And
I
he
just
feel
knew
it.
that it wasn't his time. So I was
Believe that.
But out by the pool and the bistro. And it was almost real time. It was before he had stood back up that I had seen what was transpiring. And two of my children were there. So, my first reaction was to turn them away. But it was incredibly difficult. Interestingly, I knew real time in that moment that he was fine. Like I just knew that it wasn't his time.
The chat just
So I
a
was
strip. What are you talking about? Put all questions on the super chat or super sticker.
Children, but I didn't believe the worst possible outcome had transpired. Thank God, and thank God it hadn't. And then I saw him that night when he came home from the hospital because he was also staying. That morning he had left from Bedminster.
That night, same night he came home.
He returned after he left the hospital, and it was late, 2 o'clock in the morning, and Jared and I stayed up and we met his car as he was pulling in, and I just feel like just incredibly lucky.
Evil blood.
But it's, when you can't take things for granted.
She knew it wasn't real. It was staged.
Numerous ways, that being one of them. When my mom passed prematurely, when my husband had a scare with cancer, all of these challenges that remind you how finite and how precious every moment of this life we live are, make you realize you just can't take anything for granted. And I think as you move through them and, God willing, you're able to, and we were so fortunate that day that this was a failed attempt to take his life, not a realized one. But I think you recommit to sort of love and connection and to a recognition of how short our time here on earth is and how you have to value it.
Someone shooting at your dad and trying to kill your dad. This is quite a difficult question to ask, but it's like if most of us will never be able to relate to the fact that members of the public want our parents to be deceased, and that's the reality of the situation for your father. Is someone shot at him, was trying to execute him publicly, and I wonder how that again doesn't make you negative to the world.
Because I don't allow it to. What does that accomplish? Being negative.
Yeah, he wanted to
I think that
knock out the whole country.
Brings more negativity into the world.
Even for the person that shot at your father?
She knew that was fake.
There's a lot of sickness there, and
she finna Erica Kurt, I forgive him.
I think that forgiveness is a difficult thing in this regard, but I think you have to. His living
was fake.
Was a blessing. So I could look at what happened and be rightfully traumatized by the experience. And nobody could really argue with that, but you have to move through it. And on the opposite side of that is the fact that he's with us today, that he didn't die, that my father's alive. And that is an extraordinary blessing for me as his daughter. In life, you have a choice only in how you respond. And I choose to see the positive outcome that transpired and dwell there.
The mind plays out scenarios, right? The mind plays out the scenario that where he didn't make it, where he turned his head in the other direction, the bullet hit him, and you presumably played out that scenario of how different life would have been. And
well, seeing it on repeat for months on television, on the news, was certainly like not the easiest thing, and that's part of why even before I never loved watching the news. I'll read the news, but no, I mean, he's here. Really felt like a miracle and a blessing, and that's what I focus on.
I can see the emotion again in you, which is, again, it's fascinating to me because I've heard, people around you speak about it, but the emotional toll seems to be more sort of present in you about that incident than it does about other people that I've heard speak about this.
Well, he's my father. He's my father, and he almost lost his life that day, but he didn't, and I feel truly grateful for that.
And in this second season of his presidential career, you decide that you want to pursue many other business developments and real estate developments. You step away from politics in 2022, I believe. You announced that you would not be returning for the third election campaign.
Awesome, thank
you. said,
you.
This time around, I'm choosing to prioritize my young children and the
Thank you,
private
Lady
life we're
Diamond.
creating as a family. I do not plan to be involved in politics. You also said on Lex's podcast, politics is a pretty dark world. There's a lot of darkness, a lot of negativity, and it's just really at odds with what feels good to me as a human being. I was thinking this earlier on, about 30 minutes ago. I was thinking, your nature, as I've known you, seems to be the antithesis of this type of world. Like fame.
Totally true. There's this like gladiatorial aspect of it that's just like not for me. I care deeply about policy, about helping people, and I think there's all sorts of ways to do that, and I'm doing that now in the private sector, but I don't like politics, but I do care about policy quite deeply, and I've tried to focus on that element of service.
And do you feel the need to express? You never do, because you don't punch back at the world publicly, which is, I think, something to be admired. And I've learned actually quite a lot from everything you said there about not feeling the need to like punch back at the world.
It takes training. It takes real training. I was actually reading recently.
We just screwed up inventory so bad, we're dumping $200 knives for $20.
About the crow, and I thought it was like a great metaphor for life. So crow is like a highly intelligent animal, extraordinarily so in some cases, but it can get aggressive and territorial, and it's one of the only animals that will actually attack an eagle. Like a crow will go and just, sometimes because it's being territorial and other times for fun, and the crow will actually like mob the eagle.
Hey, Larry.
And it will land on its back and it will start pecking it. And the eagle's response to this, which naturally the eagle's many times over larger than the crow, isn't to like twist and turn and knock the crow off or defend itself and then go on the offense. It's just to fly up. And it flies up while the crow continues to like just peck at its back. It flies up and up. And the crow is not built for high altitude flight. So at a certain point, as the eagle flies up, not expending any energy in the counterattack, the crow just falls off. It can't sustain the altitude. So, I kind of love that analogy for life, because you have a choice. You can turn around, you can fight back. Probably the eagle would win. Or you can just, play the game on your own terms. And I think about that sometimes, and I thought it was like a brilliant metaphor for dealing with the noise.
And you trained that muscle.
For sure.
So there was a time when you did care.
For sure, because there was a time when I was just like confused. I'm like, well, but I didn't even do that. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even know what you're, and then there's a sense of, well, that's unfair. Like, that's an unfair attack. And then you realize, like, a lot of it's unfair, especially in politics. Like, it's just like a team sport, and people attack, and, and people also, put you up on a pedestal, and you just can't get distracted by either. You just have to be yourself, and you have to fly up, let the crows fall off, and that's it. That's all you can do.
Do any of you remember a conversation I had on this podcast with anthropologist Dr. Daniel Lieberman? It was one of the most viewed conversations of all time companies. So what we've done is I
sometimes feel a lot of gratitude.
Exactly zero desire to the 1% Diary, which is this incredible tool to change habits in your life. So many of you is not fair, but the thing I find interesting is that like how you make your way in the world, and I've watched you in every interview you've ever done to talk to that love, and I have exactly zero, and I've watched you in every interview you've ever done. Company. So what we've done is we've bundled them together, and you can buy both at the same time. Are very different from your father. Now listen, I know you love your father deeply, and I've watched you in every interview you've ever done to talk to that love, and I have exactly zero desire to ask you any questions or ask anything that's going to try and drive a wedge or get you to say something that I think is not fair. But the thing I find interesting is that like how you make your way in the world and like become your own person when you do have this derivative noise that's trying to define you through things that you have never even actually done.
Yeah.
And I just find that fascinating, like how, and life has clearly made you a Stoic for this very reason, because you have to deal with, I guess to some degree, being characterized in a certain way for actions that you yourself haven't taken. So one has to become a Stoic, or else how can one possibly survive? Like we all deal, I think, on microscopic levels with like injustice.
Found the eye of the hurricane.
Yeah.
I think, but like I sometimes like feel a lot of gratitude for it, because I think sometimes you keep being taught a lesson until you learn it. And I think as somebody who always wanted peace and harmony, and I think I needed to like, maybe it took this level of intensity to be like, okay, like peace and harmony within the context that I can help facilitate, like I can't control something so much bigger than that. So sometimes like maybe that was my medicine,
Did you go to therapy?
Not in my childhood. Actually, as an adult, I have a lot of friends who are unbelievable, either teachers, professors, therapists, and I have like a very growth-oriented mindset, as you could probably tell. Like I'm always looking to learn about myself and about the world, and so they provided unbelievable perspective for me over the years.
I ask that because I imagine there's lots of people watching now who contend with their own struggles.
Yeah.
Similar to that, dealing with the outside world or...
I think therapy can be amazing. I think you have to have the right therapist and somebody who helps you sort of process and move through. I don't think it's like healthy to linger too long. Like I think you have to move forward.
When did you decide to start seeing a therapist?
One tiny flaw ruins most lighters, and almost nobody talks about it. Nearly all of them rely on butane gas, and the moment the...
In my adulthood, like as an adult, and it was more just as like another tool for me in the same way that I meditate. I view it as an opportunity to do an internal inventory.
Was there a catalyst? There's often a catalyst when I interview people. Something happened, they realized that they needed more tools.
I think some of the challenges around Jared's health. Mm-hmm. I just left Washington. Our life was in flux. Jared was diagnosed with thyroid cancer for a second time. And then my mother passed. And I wanted to make sure I'm really good at like being tough, and I'm really good at kind of compartmentalizing. So it was more just like a check with myself that I was also taking time to like, sort of like look inward and like nurture myself. So it was not particularly like formal, but it was more, and I think when you can speak to people you trust who are knowledgeable, just make sure you're like taking time to like really heal and not just move forward.
You strike me as someone that's spent a lot of time being tough
Yeah.
on the outside. Because
I'm like tough and super soft at the same time.
Yeah, but I see that.
But I've kind of, but that's like where, I have to like watch myself from, because my life has always had such intensity, like I can like move through things. Like I sometimes have to pull myself back and say like process, because I don't believe that you ever put something in a box. I think that thing that you're hiding from yourself is with you every time you make a bad decision.
and like driving the bus. You know, like you may not be like fully conscious of it, but it's like there. So you better unpack it, and as close to real time as possible. I think the better.
Yeah, in your context, I imagine as well, you can't just offload like the average person does in every context, like,
Yeah.
because there's consequences to that, whether it's trusting people, whether it's the media trying to get something on you, whoever it might be. So, and then, you're in a family where, it's important to keep a straight face, especially in public a lot. And I was watching the footage from...
Yeah, people think I'm like, have like a sort of like a stoic look in public. I'm very
But I having spent time with you behind the scenes, you have this sort of bit of a dichotomy in the sense that there's a real, like, pure, soft, empathetic soul. And then it appears to me that life is demanded for the survival in the context you've been in, that you pop a mask on in front of that to keep a straight face and a tough demeanor, and to not punch back, and to suppress that in certain contexts, because frankly you kind of have to if you're in the shoes that you've had to fill. And I guess one can keep that mask, that tough exterior on too long.
Yeah.
To the point that
well, I think you actually see it with a lot of politicians. They feel inauthentic because they are. They've experienced so much that they never allow the mask to slip.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that makes my father so unique is how is he so authentic in a world where so few people are, like in that profession, that realm. And they're like almost like, you look at, they feel like they're robots. The way they speak, the way they interact, the way they engage. Oftentimes you see that when you're with them one-on-one as you do, as it comes across like on a debate on a television set. So I think there's a balance. Like, I don't think you need to be like your most vulnerable self in the public. Like, why? Like, I think you want to be authentic, but I think like you should, like, you have to guard things about yourself, about your family. And I think that's like healthy and good. And I do think there is a part of me that's like, there's never been like there's no room for error. Like even as a child, like growing up in the public eye, I was always nervous about doing something and embarrassing my parents, and then politics, and you have to be perfect, and any slip up is completely weaponized against you. So you become very careful publicly. I think the mistake though is people get confused and they lose a sense of themselves, and they bring that into their relationships, like off the public stage, and I think that's really unfortunate.
You mentioned one of the catalyst moments for you seeking out some sort of more professional support was the death of your mother in 2022. And a beautiful photo of her, wonderful hair as well.
Watch what nuts do to our body. A walnut is really good for you. Loaded with omega-3 fats or with fiber.
Try not to cry again.
It's okay.
She's extraordinary. She was extraordinary.
It's okay.
She lived a good life, though. I tell myself with my mom, she like really lived. She
You mentioned one of the catalyst moments for you seeking out some sort of more professional support was the death of your mother in 2022. And a beautiful photo of her, wonderful hair as well.
Ooh, that hair was big.
try not to cry again.
It's okay.
She's extraordinary. She was extraordinary.
Why would she push the picture back?
She lived a good life, though. I tell myself with my mom, she like really lived. She had fun. So she taught me a lot about just like you know, the presence I talk about just like bringing attention to what you do, sorry. Oh. She was very herself, and she was very joyful, and she loved to dance, and she loved to play, and so she lived a good life.
It's an unbelievably tragic way to lose a parent, is suddenly and unexpected when they are strong. I mean, it says a lot that your grandmother, which is her mother,
still alive,
almost 100 years old, and she lost her life at 70 to falling down the stairs in her
By the way, I said my grandmother was 98, she's 99.
Wow, okay.
So, crazy. It's amazing. Yeah, no, it's very challenging, and, you know, grief is just losing a parent. It like hits different, you know, especially unexpectedly, especially sort of post-COVID, which like kind of robs so many of us of so many years. You know, for some people they sort of sheltered together, and it actually created connection between generations. And, you know, unfortunately, she was in New York and I was in Washington, so there was distance there, just geographically. But you know, I really, like, I was telling you before, we really keep her memory alive. Like, I really took the time to think about her, not through the eyes of the child who idolized her fully, but through the eyes of an adult who saw her clearly. Her strengths, her challenges, and like, I think about like my role as a parent to my own children is to sort of stand guard against, like, to make sure they're exposed to all the elements of her that were amazing, and share the stories and remind them, and also to like kind of like a lioness stand guard against the passing on of you know, challenges she had, and struggles, and so I try to do that with my own family.
Have you grieved properly?
Yeah.
Because you're very busy.
I think it's super important, and that's part of the reason I really got introspective. I think wherever there's discomfort, that's where you have to go. And, you know, I would talk about her and start to cry, just like I'm still doing, but in a different kind of way, you know? Like, I was avoiding for a moment, a very short moment, because I recognized in myself, like, the discomfort, and, like, you have to, like, unlock that, and you have to really make the time to think about and talk about and process.
On the business side of things, you have started in 2023, I believe, at 41 years old. You co-founded Planet Harvest with one of your friends, Melissa Ackerman, inspired by your experiences creating the USDA's Farmers to Families Food Box program during COVID-19. When I look at all that you do, you know, you're doing this incredible project in Albania to develop the land there. You are investing in technology companies. You've got this Planet Harvest project which is incredible. And then you've got, you know, a family, which, you know, you talk about standing in guard in front of them and so on and so forth. How do you balance all of this stuff? How does one balance it?
You don't. Like, balance is elusive. Like, I think of balance, it's like a scale. It's going to tip. You're one child's flu away from, like, complete imbalance, right? Where you get the call from the school nurse and your son has to come home unexpectedly, or there's like a roadblock in a project you're working on, or, you know, you can't, striving for balance is not.
Crazy or not, witches are born on specific dates.
We know exactly when witches.
Like a practical pursuit. I think what I strive for is to live a life that aligns with my priorities. and to have more days than not that I feel like I've done just that. And I think if you get that right most of the time, you're doing pretty well, because balance doesn't work. It's just like our lives are too hectic and there's too much outside of our control to maintain that equilibrium.
I'm so curious as to where you've, I know you've read a lot of Stoicism and you read a lot of books and you've been to therapy, but you contend with a lot: businesses, investing, real estate projects, all the family stuff, the broader noise.
Yeah.
And you've really, much of what I've learned about you is that you've really managed to center yourself on yourself. You've managed to sort of pull yourself inwards in a world that pulls all of us outwardly. And is there a particular book you might advise people to read about this, or they just have to have life hit them?
Well, I think, religion for many people provides a beautiful framework, whether it's the Bible, the Torah, of like, be a good person, like really live a purpose-driven, meaningful life. So I think there's so much wisdom there, and I think, we talked about the Stoics. I think they're some of the great guides. I also love some of the Eastern philosophies, like I love Lao Tzu, and the Tao Te Ching is an amazing, kind of reminds me of it's similar to the philosophy of jiu-jitsu around just sort of presence and not sort of fighting what is. So much of suffering comes from a rejection of like what is, like fighting something that it just is fact, as opposed to sort of that which is within our control. So I'm actually very drawn to sort of Buddhism and Taoism, and I personally feel like very alive. Like I think you look at, if you think back over the last week, and I don't know what this is for you, but you think back over the last week, maybe even the last month or the last day, like when you were in like a flow state, when you felt most alive, like that's your medicine, like that's like you in your essence. But so I try to also like put myself in those situations as much as possible, and make sure to like bring that into my life.
I'm fascinated by Planet Harvest because you could have done so much with the leverage and experience that you have, and you chose to build a business called Planet Harvest, which you can find at planet-harvest.com, that is helping to reduce food waste and creating change for farmers across the country. Why, of all the things that you could have aimed at, and I know you're aiming at many at once, but why is Planet Harvest so central to your mission at the moment?
Thank you. I mean, this is truly like a mission-driven passion and pursuit of mine. And I think I told you before that like there's nothing better than being obvious by being contrarian. And that's sort of how Planet Harvest was born. I saw through the COVID pandemic. I got really close to the farmers because I created this farmer to family food box program that created grants that would enable farmers to sell their perishable produce to third parties, distributors, NGOs, churches, who would then get it to the last mile of needs, ensuring that when people needed food, the food in the fields wasn't going to waste by being tilled under, as we saw in the early days of the pandemic. The supply chain shut down. So the restaurants were closed, the airlines, the hotels. So the farmers had no place to send their food and couldn't afford to take it out of the fields. So we created a grant program to enable that connection. But it really got me very close at a farm level to the farmer and their experience. And obviously that was a catastrophic time when there was just zero demand.
That was supposed to go to our farmers.
Even in a normalized situation, the amount of waste that happens on a field level, and the amount of food, beautiful, nutritious, perfect food that's left to rot in the fields while so many communities want for that form of nutrition. And I met a woman who's CEO of the company, and we decided to co-found an effort together to utilize this excess and create demand for it and get it into the ecosystem, supporting the environment, supporting these great American farmers. Like, I'll just give you one example. I mean, strawberries. 400 million pounds of strawberries every year get left in the fields, not even taken out and given. not because they're imperfect. They're just don't meet a really rigid cosmetic specification that's defined by retailers oftentimes 20, 30, 40 years ago, so that everything was very standardized. It's just a great way to solve a problem, provide incremental revenue for farmers, which is so needed in such a tough business. So we're really proud of the work we're doing there.
It's a beautiful, beautiful cause. I'm going to link below if anyone wants to learn more, as many details as I can about the project and ways others can get involved, whether they're retailers or farmers or anyone that's interested in getting involved.
Inside the Silver Star Survival Package, you'll find a covert, all-in-one solar briefcase generator called the Alpha Case Elite.
Ivanka, we have a closing tradition where the last guest leaves a question for the next.
And let me see what if I had anything else set up. Bear with me. I'm trying to go to sleep.
You know, folks, every now and then something happens.
Okay, y'all, I need y'all to get the likes up. I'm going to end on Bill Clinton in 2 hours and 41 minutes in. Please hit the like button so that I don't have to stop. As you can hear, my voice is beginning to change because I am sleepy. Y'all ready? Are y'all still with me? Can y'all hear me? Hello? Give me a 1 or something. Let me know y'all still here and y'all can hear me. Can y'all hear me? For real? Look at this kind, bowing his head down to Bibi Netanyahu, Lord. This is the craziest mess. Can y'all hear me? Oh, okay. Let's go.
You know, folks, every now and then something happens on the world stage that cuts right through the noise. And I need you to sit with me on this one for a minute. Because what happened on April 11th, 2026, inside St. Peter's Basilica, that wasn't just a prayer service. That was a moment. Now look, here's what you've got.
Hey, Tamika.
You've got two Americans, the most powerful man in the world and the most morally influential man in the world. And they are looking at the same war, the same suffering, the same dead children, and arriving at completely different conclusions about what God expects us to do about it. On one side, you've got a president posting on social media that he's destroyed an entire nation's military and threatening that a whole civilization will die tonight. On the other, you've got Pope Leo XIV, the first American-born pope in history, standing before the world saying, enough of the display of power, enough of war. Let me tell you something. In my years in the White House, I learned that the words the president uses during a crisis aren't just words, they're architecture. They either build a bridge to peace or they burn one down. And what we're watching right now is a collision between two visions of American leadership that will define how the world sees us for a generation. Now, what the Pentagon reportedly did to the Vatican behind closed doors, we'll come back to that in a moment. Because that part, that changes everything.
Oh, wow.
Now, to understand why that prayer vigil shook the world, you've got to understand the road that led to it, because none of this happened overnight. On February 28th, 2026, the United States and Israel launched strikes on Iran, targeting military sites, government infrastructure, assassinating the supreme leader. 6 weeks of war followed. Cities hit, civilians caught in the crossfire, global oil markets thrown into chaos. The Strait of Hormuz became a flashpoint that threatened the entire world economy. And here's where things started to shift. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth began framing this war in explicitly religious terms, praying publicly for overwhelming violence against enemies, casting American military power as divinely ordained. That's not just rhetoric, folks. That's a choice, and it's a dangerous one. Pope Leo, born in Chicago, a man who understands America in his bones, initially kept his comments measured, general appeals for peace. But by Palm Sunday, something changed. By Easter, he was calling the world to a prayer vigil. And by April 7th, when President Trump posted that a whole civilization will die tonight, the Pope responded directly, calling it truly unacceptable. We've got to remember, when I was navigating Bosnia, Northern Ireland, the Middle East, the words you choose in the middle of a crisis either open doors or slam them shut. You don't threaten civilizational annihilation on social media and then expect the moral leaders of the world to stay quiet. They didn't. And this is where things got really complicated. Now let me walk you through exactly what Pope Leo said on that Saturday evening in St. Peter's, because the words matter, every single one. He stood before 10,000 people in the Basilica, with millions more watching around the world, and he said, enough of the idolatry of self and money, enough of the display of power, enough of war. True strength is shown in serving life. And then he went further. He said, even the holy name of God, the God of life, is being dragged into discourses of death. Now, he didn't say Donald Trump's name. And I want you to understand how deliberate that was, because I know something about choosing your words carefully in a moment of crisis. And what the Pope did, that's a technique. You don't name the person, you name the behavior. That way nobody can accuse you of playing politics, but everybody in the room knows exactly who you're talking about. Then he read from letters he'd received from children in war zones. He said one perceives through the lens of innocence all the horror and inhumanity of actions that some adults boast of with pride. Now who had been boasting with pride? The President of the United States, posting on Truth Social that he destroyed Iran's military and threatening that a whole civilization would die. He also invoked St. John Paul II's appeals before the Iraq War in 2003. No more war, a journey with no return, linking this moment to a longer tradition of papal moral authority. This wasn't improvised. This was institutional memory put to work. And here's what gave it real weight. The Pope said the Church would advance in calling for peace, even when rejecting the logic of war may lead to misunderstanding and scorn. He was telling this administration in the Pentagon, I know you're angry. I'm not stopping. He didn't say, I oppose America. He said, I oppose war. And that distinction, that's where the real power is. Let me tell you something about leadership, because that's really what this comes down to. You've got two models sitting side by side right now, and the contrast could not be sharper. On one side, you've got Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth holding monthly Christian prayer services inside the Pentagon, praying for overwhelming violence against enemies, asking God to deliver justice without remorse. He said, let every round find its mark. That was March 26th, in the middle of a war, at the Pentagon, in the name of Jesus Christ. On the other side, you've got Pope Leo XIV, born in Chicago, ordained in the American tradition, a man who understands this country, leading a rosary vigil and saying, Lord Jesus, you conquered death without weapons or violence. You shattered its power with the strength of peace. Now look, I'm a man of faith. I've prayed in the Oval Office. I've prayed before making decisions that would put American lives at risk. And I can tell you, when you use the language of God to sanctify the machinery of war, you are crossing a line that no democratic leader should cross. That's not Christianity. That's the instrumentalization of Christianity, and it's dangerous. I'm not dismissing the legitimate security concerns about Iran. When I was in office, we dealt with Iranian provocations. I understand the threat. But there is a difference, a vast difference, between defending your nation and threatening to extinguish a civilization on social media and then wrapping it in scripture. We've got to remember, in the Balkans, in Northern Ireland, in the Middle East, every step toward peace required restraint, not escalation. It required leaders willing to lower their voices, not raise the stakes. Reasonable people can disagree about how to handle Iran, but threatening civilizational annihilation, that crosses the line no American president should cross, regardless of party. And when an American pope has to be the one to say it, something has gone wrong.
Absolutely.
Now here's where we come back to that Pentagon meeting I mentioned earlier, because this is where things start to get really concerning. Sometime in January, the Apostolic Nuncio, that's Cardinal Christophe Pierre, the Pope's ambassador to the United States, was summoned to the Pentagon for a meeting with Elbridge Colby, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. Now, the Pentagon says it was substantive, respectful, and professional. The Vatican called it part of regular diplomatic engagement. But the Free Press reported that defense officials told the Vatican, in effect, that America has the military power to do whatever it wants, and the church should take its side.
Oh, wow.
There were even reports, and I want to be careful here because both sides have pushed back, that a Pentagon official referenced the Avignon papacy. Now, if you know your church history, that's a reference to a period when a French king essentially kidnapped the Pope and controlled the papacy for decades. If that reference was made, even in passing,
so he threatened the Pope.
Threat dressed up as a history lesson.
He threatened
whether the meeting was confrontational or cordial.
The diocese.
The fact that it happened at all at the Pentagon, not the State Department, not the White House. That tells you something about how this administration views moral authority. They see it as a problem to be managed, not a voice to be respected. Here's the honest truth.
Wow.
When I was president, our relationships with moral institutions, the Vatican, the United Nations, allied democracies, those weren't liabilities. They were strategic infrastructure. They gave us credibility. They gave us the moral cover to broker deals and bring adversaries to the table. When you alienate the moral center, you don't just damage this administration's credibility. You make diplomacy harder for every president who comes after, every single one. And the world is watching. 1.3 billion Catholics just watched their Pope stand up to the American military establishment. That image doesn't go away. Now let's talk about the politics, because I know some folks are watching this and thinking this is a clear win for Democrats. And I'm here to tell you, it's not that simple. And we better be careful. Roughly 52 to 55% of Catholic voters went for Trump in 2024. Among white Catholics, it was even higher, around 61%. These are working people, family people, folks who care about the economy, about their communities, about their faith. And many of them voted for Trump, not because they agreed with everything he says, but because they felt he was fighting for them. But now, something has shifted. The first American-born Pope, a man from Chicago, a man who speaks their language, is standing in St. Peter's Basilica and calling the president's threats truly unacceptable. He's leading a global prayer vigil against the war this administration started. And that puts millions of Catholic voters in an extraordinarily difficult position. At the same time, you've got the evangelical base, the folks who cheer when Hegseth prays for overwhelming violence at the Pentagon. And they're not conflicted at all. They see this as a holy war. So now you've got a fracture forming inside the Republican coalition between Catholics who are hearing their spiritual father say enough and evangelicals who want more. Here's what concerns me about my own party. This is not a moment for partisan celebration. The Pope is not playing politics. He's not a Democrat. He's not an ally of the left. He's exercising moral authority that transcends party lines. And if Democrats treat this like a political gift, if they weaponize the Pope's words for campaign ads or social media dunks, they will have missed the entire point. The right response is to listen, not to score points. The right response is to ask, what is this man telling us about who we've become? And are we willing to hear it? Now let me tell you where I think this is headed, because the next few days are going to matter more than people realize. The Islamabad talks, where J.D. Vance, Jared Kushner, and Steve Witkoff sat face-to-face with Iranian negotiators, collapsed after 21 hours without a deal. Both sides are blaming each other. And just hours ago, President Trump announced a naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and said the military is locked and loaded and will finish up the little that is left of Iran. That is an extraordinary escalation. So let me lay out the scenarios as I see them. Scenario one, diplomacy holds, The ceasefire survives. Cooler heads prevail. A deal eventually emerges, and the Pope's vigil becomes a historic catalyst, a moral intervention that helped create the space for peace. In that scenario, Leo XIV joins John Paul II in the tradition of popes who bent the arc of history by speaking truth when it mattered most. Scenario 2, the ceasefire collapses. War resumes at full scale. The blockade triggers an oil crisis, and the Pope's words become a prophetic warning that was ignored. America's moral isolation deepens. Our allies distance themselves further, and we are left fighting a war that much of the world and our own spiritual institutions have condemned. Scenario 3, and this is the one that worries me most over the long term. A permanent rift between the Vatican and this administration. Not just a disagreement, a rupture, with consequences for how America is perceived by 1.3 billion Catholics worldwide, and by every nation that looks to moral institutions for guidance. I know something about making peace under pressure. At Dayton, when we brokered the accords that ended the Bosnian War, moral cover from institutions like the Vatican and the UN didn't weaken our hand.
Joy.
It strengthened it. It gave leaders political room to compromise. You take that away, and you leave yourself no room. No room for anyone. Now, some people are calling this a checkmate. The Pope checkmated Trump. I understand why they say that, but I don't think that's the right word. I'd call it a mirror. What Pope Leo XIV did on April 11th, 2026, was hold up a mirror to America and ask us, all of us, Republicans and Democrats alike, whether we recognize what we see. Because here's the honest truth. America's strength has never come solely from its aircraft carriers and its missile systems. It has come from the idea, the radical revolutionary idea, that we stand for something larger than force, that we believe in human dignity, that we lead not just with power, but with principle. And when a president threatens to destroy an entire civilization on social media, and his defense secretary prays for overwhelming violence in the name of Jesus Christ, and the Pentagon reportedly summons the Pope's ambassador to tell him to fall in line, we have to ask ourselves, is that the country we want to be? The Pope didn't answer that question for us. He can't. That's our job. That's what democracy means. It means the answer is in our hands. But he did remind us that the question exists. And in a world drowning in noise and rage and escalation, sometimes the most powerful thing a leader can do is simply say, stop, enough. Think about what you're doing. We've got to remember, this is not about one party or one president. This is about the kind of nation we are building for our children and grandchildren. A nation that threatens annihilation, or a nation that leads the world towards something better. A nation that tells its moral voices to sit down and be quiet, or a nation that has the courage and the humility to listen. The question isn't whether the Pope checkmated anyone. The question is whether we still have the wisdom, the basic human wisdom, to listen when someone tells us the truth. And folks, I still believe we do. But we've got to prove it. Not tomorrow, now.
Okay, y'all, good night. Sleep tight.